that a thumbs up? Sorry. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 24th Ordinary Council meeting, meeting 6. We will head into the agenda. Item 1 is recording and live streaming of council meetings, and I will ask our CEO, Mr. Jeremy, to read a statement.
All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however, audio from the entire room is captured. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is to hold us more accountable and improve the transparency of council's decision-making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on Council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Could we all stand to acknowledge traditional custodians and all people? Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the Taungurung people as the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting today. Council also acknowledges all of the traditional owners of the wider lands of the area known as the Alpine Shire. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Thank you. Item 3, confirmation of minutes. There's a recommendation that the minutes from the meeting 7th of May 2025 as circulated be confirmed. Councillors, moved by Councillor Byrne, seconded by Councillor Tansen. Anything to add? No. Any councillors like to comment or add? No. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Next item is apologies, and we don't have apologies, but what I would like to do is recognise the presence of Councillor Smith, and we do get a little bit of a talk about that when we start into reports, but welcome back, Councillor Smith. You've had a long, hard trip to getting yourself back here, and we really appreciate it happening and you being here. It's terrific. And then secondly, I wanted to acknowledge our Director of Assets, Mr. Rees, and his last council meeting with us, and thank him very much for his service during the time that he's been with us, and we really appreciate everything that you've helped us deliver and your participation with the team. Thank you. Item 5 is obituaries and congratulations, and I'm going to start from my right with Mr. Councillor Anderson. Sorry, got you on the hop. No. Councillor Byrne, none. Councillor Graham? No. Councillor Anderson? Smith?
You forgot me already,
Yeah,
but that's okay.
That's right.
Yeah, I got a couple.
You said you were new.
Yeah, very good. Firstly, thank you for welcoming back everyone, and really appreciate how you guys have sort of taken my slack while I've been away, so really appreciate and been great to be back today. Just on congratulations, there's a couple of people in the community I just want to congratulate, a couple of pillars of our community, one being Graham Gale, so he's an acknowledgement for his service for a number of years through the Bright SES. It's an amazing achievement, and his longevity of what he's been involved in that SES. His years of service are amazing. Also, another very huge part of the Bright community is Jason Reid. Jason Reid also received the Order of Australia Medal, which is a huge achievement. But his involvement he was a previous councillor here. He's been involved in the Brighter Days for 15 years since its inception. The amount of fundraising he's done through there, also through local Lions Club, his achievements just go on, and congratulate to Jason. I know he's going through some hard times himself personally, but fantastic. The other one, just a huge congratulations to a young lady from Bright, Daisy Pearce. She was inducted into the AFL Hall of Fame recently, which is a huge achievement. So well done to all those three very worthy recipients in their respective areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Ronco.
Yeah, the same thing. So from Graham Wells from the Bright SES and Jason Reid, Vice President of the Brighter Day Charity Foundation, for their recognition during the King's Birthday honour. So Graham received the Emergency Service Medal, and Jason received the Medal of the Order of Australia, recognizing their dedicated service to our local alpine community. So I know also that Graham is a very good photographer. And same thing, I've been meeting with Jason long time and been involved with Brighter Day Festival, with quite a good charity foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Councillor Tanzan.
Yep, so I've got one. I would like to congratulate the organisers and the artists who contributed their time and helped to run the Alpine Arts Trail. It was a pretty successful event from what I hear, and hopefully we can see more events like that in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Tanzan. I have a couple of things I'd like to talk to. One is an obituary. It's for, I'm always bad at these. It's for Lawrence Redaway, who didn't actually live in the Alpine Shire, but because of his connection with the Alpine Shire and his daughter Fiona Redaway, who passed away quite some time ago, he was part of establishing a fund to support young people to achieve their dreams across the Shire. I was part of the committee that helped organise that, which is why I know about it. It was a very successful fund which supported a number of youngsters to travel and get training and head towards achieving their dreams. And I'd very much like to recognise Lawrence for that contribution to our community. I'd also like to recognise Tom Dudley, who's a young man who has been added to the Australian tennis team, and he's currently with Mr. Jeremy and I were just talking, we think he's in Turkey at the moment, training.
Been back.
He's been there and back. Anyway, some absolute terrific effort for a young man from the Alpine Shire who has some other things going on in his life that make it tricky for him to participate in general sports. So congratulations to Tom Dudley and his family who support him so magnificently. Thank you. We now move on to item 6, which is declarations by councillors of conflict of interest. And I would like to ask councillors if any councillors have a conflict of interest on any items on the agenda tonight, and remind people that even if they don't declare one now, if they identify one or think or recognise they have one at any point in the agenda, they can call it out right then. So, Councillor Byrne.
Conflict of interest for item 8.3.1 and item 8.3.9.
Point 9. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Anderson.
I've got a conflict of interest for 8.2.4, the budget submission C, the timekeeper's box.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Smith.
Same as Councillor Anderson. I also have a conflict in regards to being involved in the Bright Football Netball Club, so I'll be conflict for that one. I'll be for the timekeeper's box.
Thank you. Any other councillors got conflicts? No. And just for those, actually, I'll wait until the next section before I talk more about conflict. The next item is questions on notice, and I recognise people in the audience who have actually sent in questions on notice, and I wanted to invite them to ask their questions or read their questions out themselves, or I'm happy to do so. Mr. and Mrs. Hoare. Okay. So we got 2 questions from Bruce Hoare. Bruce attended last month's meeting and in Mount Beauty, and he would like to ask 2 questions concerning the minutes of the last meeting. Question 1. No conflict of interests were declared at the beginning of the meeting, section 6, which we just had. Later in the meeting, a vote was held in regard to an issue with the expansion of a caravan park in Myrtleford, where a councillor abstained from the vote. Given the councillor's potential business interest, would any briefings received by a councillor concerning the affairs of a competing business constitute a formal conflict of interest, even when abstaining from any vote concerning the competing business? Can council redefine the rules around conflict of interest requirements for both councillors and council officers and read it into the record? So my response is, conflict of interest laws are prescribed under the Local Government Act 2020, and sorry, I did have another bit. It's in section 127 to 131, I believe, of that Local Government Act, and also in the Local Government Governance and Integrity Regulations 2020. The obligation to disclose a conflict of interest is a personal responsibility. Each relevant person must monitor their own circumstances and identify their conflicts of interest. We also have conflict of interest requirements spelt out in our governance rules, which are on the internet, and it's Chapter 7, it's titled Conflict of Interest. Question 2 from Mr Hoare is, the Council read into the record a status update to the Council Climate Action Plan, which was developed on the back of the Alpine Shire Council's Climate Emergency Statement. During the meeting, on what is a relatively low-level issue with continued positive outcomes, a councillor abstained from the vote to accept the report. While I would like to understand why the councillor abstained, I am concerned that councillors no longer support climate action within the Shire. Can I please ask the councillors to read into the record their belief or non-belief in man-made climate change, the risks to residents, especially planning producers and business in the Shire, and that the council plan or climate action plan climate-related goals have not been recently modified due to a change requested by councillors in denial of climate change? And our response, Mr Hoare. Council makes decisions as a collective body and not as individuals. Decisions taken by council, whether these are taken during the current, or a previous term of council, are binding on the councillors individually and also on council as a collective body. In the May 2025 Ordinary Council meeting, council was presented with and subsequently adopted the Alpine Shire Council Climate Action Plan 2025-29. On the basis of this decision, council as a collective body demonstrated its support of the Climate Action Plan so dated. This decision provides direction to the CEO to move forward with the delivery of this plan with the full support of the councillors as individuals and of the council as a collective body. Under the Local Government Act 2020, councillors are required to participate in the decision-making of the council to represent the interests of the municipal community in that decision-making and to consider the diversity of interests and needs of the municipal community. This means that they cannot limit their consideration to the interests and needs of those with whom they share particular interests. I'm satisfied that each councillor does fulfil these individual obligations under the Act and that we work together as a team after decisions made. And we recognise that transparent communication is required to build trust and confidence in the council within the community. There is also no formal obligation on individual councillors to defend their position on any matter on which they vote on behalf of the municipal community. Individual councillors are able to be contacted through their email contact details on the Alpine Shire Council website. And I am going to ask councillors if they would like to respond individually to the question, and people may say what they'd like.
I think you summed it up pretty well there. Nothing from me.
Nothing for me.
No, that's very good.
Happy?
I'm very happy with what you said, Sarah.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr Hall. The next question that I'm going to address is from Amanda Hoare, Admin and Markets Manager, Brighton District Chamber of Commerce. Amanda's first question is about statutory planning key performance indicators. Thank you for the detail provided in the Council report regarding the statutory planning delivery improvements and the work taken to date to action improvements in this area. What specific month will the KPIs be developed and published publicly? When will be the first month of performance reporting to councillors and executives? And when will the biannual reporting to council meetings begin? And I will ask, was I going to answer this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Amanda. Great questions about statutory planning. The monthly updates are currently being provided to councillors and executive. The first formal report to council will be in October of this year, and that will contain both our KPIs and encompass the full quarter's data for the new financial year. So that will enable us to have the full quarter, and then the further report will be provided in April, which will enable us to have the full 3 quarters of the year's data. So October and April, we'll bring reports back to council. Thank you.
Can I just ask one more? So based on that, KPIs have already been developed?
So we'll be basing the KPIs on a mix of LGPRF and data and KPIs that are currently in development. We are producing reports for councillors and executives, and we're using the data that we're using in those reports to develop ongoing KPIs for reporting. So it's ongoing. It's ongoing, and we'll have them in place and report against them in October.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Second question is about the budget submission that the Brighton District Chamber of Commerce submitted. As part of the budget submission process, the Chamber submitted a document containing 11 specific questions regarding the budget. The Chamber has noted that none of our questions have been addressed and that they have not influenced the final budget. When will Council provide a written reply to the Chamber's questions? Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you again, Amanda. All submitters to the budget will get a written response to their submissions. These responses will be issued within 5 business days after tonight.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Bruce. The third question is from Scott Brandon from the Bright Brewery. Dear Alpine Shire councillors, Bright Brewery pay the commercial rate that is charged to all commercial businesses within the Alpine Shire. According to the council budget, this is to be used for business development, and yet only $143,000 has been allocated in the 2025 budget. How will the remainder of the rate be used for business development? And I'll ask Ms Cook to respond to this one too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the commercial industrial rate provides for the higher cost of servicing commercial industrial properties. In addition, investments required to support municipal-wide impacts of the tourism industry in particular, for which a proportion of commercial properties are key beneficiaries. We have attempted to find the $143,000 figure that's been quoted in this question, and we're unable to do so in our draft budget, so we're not sure the basis of that figure. However, the level to which council chooses to invest expenditure to undertake both economic development and tourism strategies or business development strategies is as approved in the annual budget each year and adopted by council.
Thank you. Now I will invite questions from the floor, if anybody has any. Please. Okay, thank you. No questions from the floor. Oh, right. Okay, well, you know the process. Come up and turn on the microphone and state your name and residence, please. That's quick enough.
My name's Ray Dyer and I reside at Buffalo River. This is directed to the CEO, Will. I've asked on 2 separate occasions for the contract for the toilets. And what I've got so far is absolutely ridiculous. And I also asked for the last time, after the second time I've asked for them, I turned around and said I'd also like to see what maintenance has been done on the toilets in the last 12 months. Well, that was over 2 months ago, Will. When's it going to happen? This is the 3rd time at a council meeting. I was very disappointed when it was 3 times with the recycling rubbish in the main streets, where I said I believe that the rubbish gets tipped into the skip bin and goes to Echuca, which I was right, but it took you 3 council meetings to do that. The second question is, have you done anything about it and tried to address the situation? So there's 2 questions there, the toilets with the contract and the 12 months maintenance, and also the recyclable bins that are in the towns around the Shire, that actually all the recycling actually goes into the skip bin and goes to Echuca. I didn't see any accountability on that whatsoever.
Thank you for those questions, Mr Dyer. I'm going to ask Mr Rees to respond to those. So Mr Rees has been liaising around the questions that you've provided in relation to both of those questions. Thank you, Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Thank you for your question, Ray. With regards to the schedules of cleaning for public toilets and bins, my understanding is that you had a meeting with Councillor Graham, who gave you a copy of those schedules as requested, is what I understood has happened. So I believe that you've been shared that detail that you requested. And as we've discussed with regards to the public waste, one of the challenges we do have with public bins is the contamination rates of non-recyclables being put into recycling bins. And what our contractor does is inspects those recyclable bin contents, and when they are contaminated, unfortunately, they have to be put through the general waste collection service.
I'm talking about 100% of the rubbish going into the skip bins. Now, on the weekend, I saw a truck going around. I know the setup with the toilets and the bins and the barbecues. I did it for a few years, and that I did it by myself. But I noticed there are 3 people doing the bins and the toilets and the barbecues. Now, I don't really understand how 3 people could do it when one did it back when it was Myrtleford Shire. There's definitely a problem there somewhere. But one thing about it is the toilets have got up to standard a bit. They've come up a bit, but it's taken nearly 18 years to do that.
Ray,
And the other thing is, the Shire hasn't even had the common courtesy to really talk to me about it, to say why is there, I believe the toilets are disgusting, need work.
just appreciating your comments, but you've asked some questions and they've been answered, so thank you very much.
So that's all. So when will I get the report of the contract? Because as far as I'm concerned, what I got from Alan was absolutely ridiculous. Well, the first time all it was where all the garbage bins were around the Shire, and that was it. And that was supposed to be for the toilets. The second time I got the bins and the toilets too, but you try and make sense of it, it's pretty rough.
The understanding, Mr. Dyer, is that we've been provided with what you asked for.
No, I have not, Sarah. I'm saying there's a problem with it and I'd like to talk to somebody about it. Not get it washed under the carpet, and I'm talking accountability. Twice I've asked for it. This is the 3rd time now.
Well, all I can say is if the officers say they've provided it to you, then maybe there's something, if it's left here, maybe perhaps it hasn't arrived with you.
Pardon?
Maybe if it's left this organisation, it just hasn't got to you. So it's something that...
Well, it's been 8 weeks since I asked for it at the 2 months ago at a council meeting when I asked for the...
Exactly, and the staff have said that it's been sent, so...
I checked my mail today and there's nothing in my box.
Perhaps I could ask a clarifying question. So my understanding, Alan, is that you've shared information with Councillor Graham on forwarding to Mr. Dyer. Could I ask whether that process has followed through to a conclusion and information has been shared with Mr. Dyer?
Yes.
Thank you. So, Mr. Dyer, from our perspective, we have shared with you what you requested. If what you've received isn't what you want, then please let us know if there's additional information. We're happy to transfer this. We have done what we thought you had asked for. So we've tried our best to give the information you're seeking.
No, you haven't, Will, because the last time I asked for the last 12 months of maintenance on the toilets, and nothing's been done about that.
Ray, you're verging into the matters that have already been resolved or addressed, so it's time for us to continue with the meeting. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but the matters have not been addressed, and I'm talking about accountability.
Thank you. No. Do you want to have another meeting with him? Do you want to have another meeting with him?
Catch up.
Yep. Councillor Graham and I have just had a quick talk at the table. He will catch up with you, Mr. Dyer, outside this meeting and see if we can resolve this matter with you. Yep.
Sorry?
Here's the phone. Super. For those who couldn't hear, Mr Dyer now has a phone. Okay. Item 8.1.1 under 8.1 is Chief Executive Officer Will Jeremy. He has one item tonight, 8.1.1, which was the leave of absence report that we put forward so that we didn't lose Councillor Smith, because he has taken quite some time to get over his massive health matters and is now with us, which is terrific. And so this item is withdrawn. It was a request for a leave of absence because if a councillor misses more than 3 council meetings in a row, they lose office without 3 meetings in a row without leave of absence. So it was just in case Councillor Smith couldn't make it. So then we move on to section 8.2, Director Corporate and Community Ms Cook, and 8.2.1, the budget report, Q3 review 24-25.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of the budget report, Q3 review for 24-25, or the report, is to provide Council with an overview of the year-to-date results for the period which ended at 31 March 2025, and to provide an update on the forecast financial position against the full-year budget at that time. The forecast variance to budget has been changed through a mix of drivers, which includes forecast additional income and reduced expenditure, which was primarily due to an updated depreciation amount. And the recommendation is that Council receives and notes the budget report for the Q3 review for 24-25 for the period ending 31 March 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors. Moved. Oh, a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Byrne, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Councillor Byrne.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Councillor Anderson. Any other councillors have anything to say? Councillor Ronco.
I have noted that Council succeeded to reduce its expenses by 798,000 and increase its income by 590,000, which make a result improvement of 1.4 million from the adopted budget 2024-2025 to the forecast full year 2024-2025 ended in June 2025. How will this improvement help to address any underlying surplus or deficit?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. So at the beginning of the 24-25 budget year, we were predicting or projecting a large underlying deficit. Throughout the course of a year, the position changes. So the budget is a projected position throughout the course of a year and can change depending on your income and your expenditure levels. So throughout the course of the 24-25 year, Council has received more income than was budgeted at the beginning of the year and has also reduced its expenditure, which means that we have significantly reduced down that underlying position and increased our operating position against the budget.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a great news. Thank you.
Any other councillors with some questions? No? I have a question. The budget report that we've got is the March quarter, and we're now in June. Is there a way that we could get these reports a bit more close to the time?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's a very valid question, valid point. We're presenting the March Q3 review at the same time as the budget for next year. The reason for the delay in the presentation of the report is, one, the report deals with the period up until the 31st of March, so there is a period of time after that where the accounts are closed and the report is collated. It is then presented to our Audit and Risk Committee at the next available Audit and Risk Committee meeting. So that Audit and Risk Committee meeting this year, at this time, was in May, so it was presented to the May Audit and Risk Committee meeting for review, and then it comes to the next available council meeting, which unfortunately has moved it to June. I recognise that is, it is less than useful to have a budget report a significant period of time after. It could be brought further forward, and we'll explore ways to do that potentially with our audit committee as well, to see whether there is a way of bringing the report to council closer to the end of the budget period.
Thank you. It would be nice to know if we were in trouble a bit sooner. Thanks. I just did want to pick out a couple of things that I thought were really significant in the budget too. It was not a huge amount of money, but it was really good that the community development program achieved some culturally, linguistically diverse funding from I understand we're one of the few rural councils who did achieve them, and congratulations to our team for making that happen. And I also wanted to pick out the customer experience expenses. They actually went up, and I've got a question. Does that actually mean that the libraries were used more? Because that was one of the places that where additional expenditure was required. But also there was increased operational expenditure around tree management because of storm damage. And what I wanted to point out there is that it's really important that we do have a buffer so that we can manage things like that. But my question is, and it is without notice, is there any indication that libraries were better used and that therefore that's why they cost more?
So I don't have the detail in front of me as to why the library's operational expenditures increased in the Q3 budget, but I also don't have any indication that we've had a significant increase in usage of the libraries. We will be reporting our libraries data, our service data in our local government reporting framework reporting at the end of financial year, where we report against the usage of a number of our services, and libraries is one of them.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Nothing else from other councillors? We'll take this to the vote. All those in favour of receiving a noting report? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is 8.2.2, adoption of the Revenue and Rating Plan. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Local Government Act 2020 requires each council to prepare and adopt a revenue and rating plan, which covers a minimum period of 4 years following each council election. The purpose of the plan is to determine the most appropriate and affordable revenue and rating approach for council, which, in conjunction with other income sources, will adequately finance the objectives in the council plan. It identifies financial and revenue-related risks and ensures that these are effectively mitigated and managed. The plan outlines the principles and strategic framework that council will utilise in calculating and distributing rates to property owners. However, the quantum of the rate revenue actually raised and the rating differential amounts is determined in the budgeting process, the Alpine Shire budgeting process. The draft plan was released for public exhibition following the April 2025 Ordinary Council meeting. Thank you. Public submissions were received during the exhibition period and are summarised in the report with responses. After consideration, the submissions received did not alter the revenue and rating plan that's been presented to you tonight from the version that was tabled at the April 2025 council meeting. And the recommendation is that council notes that submissions were received regarding the draft revenue and rating plan and adopts the Alpine Shire Council revenue and rating plan for 2025 and signs and seal it at the appropriate time of the meeting.
Thank you, Ms Cook.
Thank you.
Councillors. Councillor Ronco. Oh, no, you're not. No.
Move and second.
Move? Yeah, that's what I mean. Move? One second. Pick it. Councillor Byrne, sorry, I was... Councillor Byrne, get in there. Councillor Ronco.
Just a question. I noticed that Council is committed to regularly review the rate differential to ensure they remain relevant. Could the Director explain how regularly this review is conducted?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Currently, the review is conducted every 4 years when we undertake a formal review of the revenue and rating plan. However, we can review the plan more often than that should we choose. We are committed to undertake more regular review of the rating differentials as is discussed in the report, and we are proposing that we will review the movements in CIV values across the different classifications and track this annually to ensure that we're aware of any significant movements within the different classifications, and then further decisions can be made as to whether a more formal review is required.
Thank you.
Any questions from other councillors? Councillor Anderson.
I see here in the report that they've got 2 submissions for the plan. Will they be notified after this meeting, or have they been notified already?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. As with the budget submissions, there will be formal responses provided to submitters to the revenue and rating plan, and they also will be provided within 5 business days of tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other councillors? No. So one of the submissions and some other discussions we've had have been around changing the differential rate, particularly the farming differential rate, and lowering it to accommodate increases in land prices and property value. If Alpine Shire was to pursue that and yet still achieve the total rate revenue we can under the rate cap, what would that, if we lowered the farming differential, what would that do to the other rates?
So the way that council rates operates is that council receives the same income across all revenue income streams, in much the same way that the rate cap doesn't apply equally across all income, all rateable properties, because of the way the value is accounted for determining the individual rating amount. Should we change the differential, it impacts the other categories within the differential structure. So a reduction in a differential for one structure would potentially would lead to an increase in something in another. So at the moment we have 3 differential structures. We have farming properties, commercial, industrial and residential in our differential rating structure. A reduction of potentially of farming means that we'd need to reassess what the differential, what the rate in the dollar charge to the other differentials are, and they would proportionally increase depending on the resolution of council to account for the reduction in one.
Thank you, Ms Cook. So that is something that obviously we would consider if we were to review the revenue and rating plan into the future.
So for a review that it impacts on the differential structure within the revenue and rating plan, yes, it can be considered by council, but there would also need to be a significant period of community consultation because it would impact across the entirety of the municipality.
Thank you. Any further questions from councillors? No, we'll take this to vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. The next item is 8.2.3, adoption of the 25-26 rates and charges. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to declare the Alpine Shire Council rates and charges to be raised for the 2025-26 financial year for the period 1 July 2025 to 30 June 2026. The recommendation is quite detailed and is on your screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Yep. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Tanzin. Councillor Anderson. Do I have any councillors who would like to comment on the rates and charges?
Yep. So, right now I'm thinking of residents who are facing the cost of living alone, exacerbated by new taxes such as the Victoria Land Tax or the Emergency Service and Volunteer Fund. Since the rise of inflation and the pressure of cost of living in Australia and worldwide, Alpine Shire Council have always followed the rate cap recommendation to maintain services and finance the objective of the council plan. I also recognise that the Alpine Shire Council hardship policy has helped our most vulnerable residents. Today, I would like to convince my fellow councillor to advocate for a 0% rate increase in the 2025-2026 rate and charge to address our residents' cost of living. The recommended 3% rate increase represents $536,000. I would like to ask the Alpine Shire CEO, Mr. Jamie, to confirm that Council investment portfolio financial year forecast is close to $900,000 in interest.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. I can confirm that Council receives interest on its investment portfolio to the order of magnitude that you've stated there. So that's included in Council's revenue stream for the 25-26 financial year in the budget. Thank you.
I also understand that the Alpine Shire Council budget is facing an underlying deficit of $1.22 million. Could the Alpine Shire CEO, Mr. Jeremy, explain that the Alpine Shire has been facing some underlying deficit for the past 10 years and that Alpine Shire have always been able to increase their revenue and reduce their expenditure to address it? And we acknowledge that we will need to address it in our 10-year financial plan.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. So I can talk about the 10-year period from 2015-16 to 24-25. Over that 10-year period, in 8 of those 10 years, council had a budget which was adopted based on an underlying deficit, adjusted underlying deficit. So that was 8 out of those 10 years. And the underlying result over those 10 years varied from between a plus 4.9%, so a surplus, an underlying surplus, through to a minus 13.6%, so a deficit. But it varied across those 10 years, of which 8 years we started the year with an adjusted underlying deficit.
Yep, thank you. And could Mr. Jeremy confirm that the Alpine Shire Council have enough unrestricted cash on hand to address the loss of the 536,000 rate increase?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. So if I talk about next year, we're forecasting at the moment to have an adjusted underlying deficit of just over $1.2 million. So what that means in reality, if you think of your household finances, if you take out any big purchases that you might have been saving up for, it means that we're going to spend more next year than we have coming in. That's the bottom line. So, Councillor Ronco, if council was to lose $530,000 of income that we've got in the budget at the moment, for example, through freezing rates at 0%, essentially it would increase the deficit that we're forecasting for next year from 1.2 million to 1.7 million. So the next question is, could council afford to do that? The answer is yes. Council has unrestricted cash that it could use to fund the shortfall in its operating budget. The challenge we have, however, is that if council chose to freeze rates and to forego next year $530,000, they have to do that every year. They're committing to do that every year into the future, because you cannot then increase the rates again to recover that, except by going to the Essential Services Commission and seeking an exemption to exceed the rate cap. So what you would be doing essentially, the direction council would be providing to me through that direction, is that you would be asking me to save a further $530,000 every single year into the future to offset the loss of rates, plus the indexing through the increases in the rates that would happen. So it's a very significant loss of revenue for council in a year when we're already forecasting an underlying deficit, and where our 10-year finances at the moment look like every year at the moment we've got an underlying deficit position. So to be transparent, we're in an unsustainable financial position, so this proposal would make that financial position worse than it currently is. What it would likely do is bring forward a need for council to consider cutting services, or for council to consider going to the Essential Services Commission to seek a rate cap exemption and increase rates in the future.
Could you confirm that the Alpine Shire have currently no financial loan?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. That's correct. Council at the moment has no borrowings, which does place it in a positive position relative to lots of other councils that have a challenging financial position and also have loans that they have to pay off. So council does have no debt.
So, yep, just with all the information now on hand, so I would like to, if the current motion for 3% rate increase fail, to rise a foreshadow motion for a 0% rate increase in the 2025-2026 financial year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. I just wanted to remind both Councillor Anderson and Councillor Townsend that they can reserve their right. So if you'd like to comment later in this discussion, you are welcome. Does any councillors have any questions to ask? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mayor Nicholas. Whilst I like Councillor Ronco's idea of a 0% increase, and I think it's a very aspirational position to take, our CPI is currently somewhere near 5%, so a 3% rate increase is still 2% below CPI. We've just had notification of our road materials for road maintenance is going to be increasing very significantly. Our grants, government grants this year are more than $10 million less than they have been in previous years. The company AEC recommended that we actually ask for an increase over the rate cap for our long-term sustainability. Governments are constantly cost shifting and pushing services onto councils. With reduced income, The result is a reduced an expenditure that we can expend, and which then means we have reduced services for our residents and ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Any other councillors? Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just on the other side of that, I just want to highlight the fact that our ratepayers, we've got a, we're on a case-by-case scenario. If there's any hardship out there, more than happy for us to look at people that have got specific, hardship. Come and talk to us, talk to people in the Shire. We can make arrangements for hardship on a case-by-case scenario. So I want to make sure that people out there understand that. And, if we can help in any way, we want to help as well.
Councillor Anderson.
I've just got a question on that. Have we had an increase in people, a dramatic increase in ratepayers applying for hardship assistance? Sorry, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. We actually have very few people on our financial hardship policy. However, if people would like to access that policy, it's on our website. I'm also advised that we have not had an increase over the previous years on people accessing that policy.
Any other councillors got a comment or a question? No, just
to answer a bit of the question.
Go. No, you can. Go for it.
I try to convince everyone, and I want to be a bit optimist there. And I know that we have a big work to do to see for the 10 years plan for the council to address this deficit. And I'm quite optimistic, and we have a good bunch of fellow councillors, that we could do it. And I find this year's very important because, as I say, who are ratepayer and residents facing a lot of increase, and especially the emergency levy and the tax land. And that's why I want to think carefully that, I don't advocate for every year to have a zero rate, freeze rate, but for this year, I think it's very, very important. And I find we could do it, we could afford it. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Don't usually get a right reply, but there you go, you just did it. So I have some questions. Not sure whether it's Ms Cook or Mr Jeremy. Have we investigated borrowing recently? And if we did, what sort of cost would it be to the organisation?
So thank you, Madam Mayor. We did investigate borrowing recently just to understand the parameters, and we looked at the Treasury finance interest rates. The cost of the organisation obviously depends on how much you borrow, but it's very much the same as borrowing for your household expenses. You're borrowing for the principal sum and then you're paying interest. So if you need to borrow, and we have a borrowings policy as well, the council adheres to with regards to borrowings, even though we don't have any. If you need to borrow, then clearly you're paying an interest amount which is at a cost to council, but that interest amount would depend on how much you're borrowing.
Sure. Thank you, but it's so similar to if you're buying an expensive house, because we'd have to borrow quite a bit of money. Yep, thank you. My other question was, just slipped my mind. Oh, I was going to ask, I'm not quite sure whether it's Mr Jeremy or Ms Cook, about the unrestricted cash and the uses that we have put it to in the past. And what I'm thinking about is being able to access funding, being able to do unbudgeted works because they were urgently needed or whatever it might be. So I just wondered if we could have a little outline of how useful having this cash reserve is.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps I can respond to that one. So it's critically important that council retains a cash buffer and doesn't run its unrestricted cash down to very low levels. So you've picked up a few really good examples there why it's important. One of those is our ability to leverage external grant funding depends quite often on our ability to match that funding with council's own cash. So if council has no cash to match, we lose lots of opportunity to access external funding. So it's really important to have some funding set aside, but also it's really important to maintain a buffer against some uncertainty in the future. It could be an emergency event where council is required to fund upfront some costs that it incurs in responding to the emergency, and then it might take it a significant amount of time or to recover back through the government, or it may not even be able to recover those costs. So unrestricted cash is really important. It's important to maintain a buffer because it protects council and it gives you opportunities that you don't have if you have very low levels of unrestricted cash.
Thank you.
My last argument to try to convince you again.
So normally you don't get extra goes, but I will
But
let you do
the
it
little one.
this last time.
It's the last time, so yeah, just also with this rate freeze. So if that's happened, so I would like to encourage residents to continue to support local economy and local businesses as they already do. So yeah, so it will be an extra money and extra coffee, I don't know, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any councillors who haven't said anything like to contribute the discussion? Councillor Anderson, you moved this item, so you do have a right of reply if you have anything you'd like to sum up or something to add? No? Right then, we will take this one to the vote. The recommendation is for the 3% rate rise and the other charges that are also part of this discussion. I'll take the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. So that is not unanimous. Councillor Ronco voted against, as we thought he might. And yeah, great sentiment, Councillor Ronco, and very much understood. The next item is submissions to the draft budget, 8.2.4, and we have two conflicts of interest for this matter. So Councillor Anderson and Councillor Smith will be leaving the room at 5:51. Item 8.2.4. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to respond to the submissions received on the draft Alpine Shire Council Budget 2025 to 26. The recommendation is that Council considers the written submissions received pursuant to Council's community engagement policy in relation to the draft budget and makes amendments to the draft budget as is outlined in the tables before you. Table A outlines the capital expenditure amendments that have been made between the draft budget and the final budget that is in your report. Table B outlines the sum of the operational expenditure that has been made, the net change resulting from operational adjustments between the draft and the final budget. Table C outlines the changes made to income between the draft and the final budget. And recommendation 3 is to note the following community submissions that did not result in changes to the draft budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors. Moved, Councillor Byrne. Seconded, Councillor Ronco. Councillor Byrne.
With the submissions under capital expenditure in A, could we talk to, firstly, Myrtleford Memorial Hall and Nimmo Pedestrian Bridge? I believe these were grant funded and have an expiry date as at June 30. Are we confident we can carry this funding over?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. So just for clarity, both of those projects are grant funded. What you're seeing here in terms of the request or change is that now that we're closer to the end of the financial year, these are the numbers that we're confident that need to be carried forward in order for those works to be completed. For the Myrtleford Memorial Hall, we're 100% confident that those funds can be carried forward in negotiations with the funding agencies. However, for the Nimmo Pedestrian Bridge, we are confident that they will be supported and approved to be carried forward, and we're planning on that basis. However, it's not guaranteed. We're still working through some challenges. All stakeholders are aware of the situation. It's a complex challenge that we're working through. So we're hopeful that they will be allowed to be carried forward, but it is not guaranteed.
Thank you, Alan. Following on from there, there's two other projects, the Bright Pioneer Park Timekeepers Box and the Netball Storage Pioneer Park. I believe they're being funded externally, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Councillor Byrne. So the Bright Pioneer, they're both late additions due to funds either being made available by a community group, in the case of the Bright Pioneer Park Timekeepers Box, or the Tiny Towns program, which successfully funded the netball storage at Pioneer Park. So both are externally funded and will be delivered using existing project management resources in our capital works program through an in-kind contribution of those salaries and wages and time.
Thanks, Director Rees. No more.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Ronco?
Yeah, just Dave asked the same question regarding the Bright Pioneer Park timekeeper box and also the netball storage at Pioneer Park. So it was the same question that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors with questions?
Yeah.
No? Yep. Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Mayor Nicholas. Particularly relating to the capital expenditure list, I found the list quite confusing, and I'm sure anyone that's looking from the outside the organisation will probably be more confused than I am. Could you give us some information as to what the difference between a request change and the budget actually is on the items?
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Graham. Yes, I can understand how that confusion could arise. So the column titled request/change, if there are no brackets around it, it is a request or a change to increase or add the amount to the draft budget for consideration by Council tonight. If there are brackets around it, like item F, it indicates a reduction in the amount of money that has been proposed for the budget. The final column, budget FY 25-26, is the amount proposed in the final draft budget that councillors are being asked to consider this evening. So as an example, under item A, the Mount Beauty Airport land purchase, subject to a report later on this evening, officers are requesting an allocation of $22,000 to be able to complete that transaction, and therefore the budget amount has been increased to $22,000 for tonight. Equally, a different example, the item F, fleet and large plant renewal and new. We have looked at our large plant and fleet requirements, thinking about how better to manage that asset class and the financial situation we're in. And we are recommending a reduction of $365,000 compared to what was proposed in the draft budget in order to better assess our needs going forward. And so the updated amount requested for Council's consideration this evening is $525,000 instead of $890,000. Hopefully that provides a mathematical explanation.
Yeah, hopefully.
Any further questions or comments on this part of the agenda? No, I do have a question around the Harrietville Historical Society, who we've had some discussions with them and proposed putting forward some money to support them to revamp their gold shed so they can use it for part of their display, but it doesn't appear in this report. Could I please have an explanation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You're right, the gold shed doesn't appear as its own line item. However, under Table B, operational expenditure, which is a net change resulting from operational adjustments of the 259, it is included in that calculation. So the Harrietville Gold Shed has been incorporated as a community, was a grant that has been recommended for Council's consideration for that community group.
Thank you very much. I think they might be watching the meeting. Any further questions or comments about the report? No, we'll take it to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Can somebody please let Councillor Smith and Councillor Anderson know they're welcome back? I didn't give them a chance to say what their conflict was. It was involved with the timers keepers box at Pioneer Park. And they re-entered the room at 5:59. Welcome back, love it. The next item is 8.2.5, adoption of the 2025-26 budget. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to recommend adoption of the Alpine Shire Council 2025-26 budget. Council has completed preparation of the budget, which is aligned to the draft Community Vision and Council Plan 2025-26. Through continued strong financial control, the budget provides a prudent financial position, which enables Council to continue to deliver services and projects as conditions continue to evolve. This budget projects an operating surplus of $2.12 million and an underlying operational deficit of $1.22 million, which has been influenced by a rate increase of 3% in line with the rate cap, the inclusion of the commercial industrial properties from Dinner Plain in the differential rating policy, capital works expenditure totalling $9.56 million and a material and services budget of $15.76 million. In addition, the fees and charges schedule, which has been included in the 25-26 budget, provides a comprehensive list of charges which will apply in the delivery of services to the community. Broadly, fees and charges have increased in line with the proposed rate cap increase of 3%, with some increases based on a cost recovery calculation. Since the draft budget, Council has reviewed its fee associated with operating the Pea Shooter Toboggan Run in Dinner Plain and is proposing to introduce a $10 fee, inclusive of GST per day per person over the age of 3, to assist with the operating costs of snow operations at Dinner Plain. In addition, it's worth pointing out that for 2025-26, Council's implemented a new system for managing fees and charges, which now provides a searchable page available on Council's website from the 1st of July 2025. This is intended to increase clarity and ease of reference for our customers, and we welcome feedback on the new system. The recommendation is on your screen and is that Council adopts the Alpine Shire budget, incorporating amendments adopted by Council in the budget submissions report, which has been before you previously, and incorporating the rates and charges. And it authorises the Chief Executive Officer to give public notice of the adoption of the budget for 2025-26 and delegates authority to the CEO to reflect any changes made by Council at this meeting, which are not reflected in the budget document as has been attached, and to make minor topographical amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors. Move Councillor Byrne. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Smith. Councillor Byrne. Oh, you're just gentle.
I'll leave it as I'd like to thank all the councillors for the considerable hard work that's gone into putting this together, and also the officers and directors on their focus on reducing material and cost expenses and operating expenses as best we can. Thank you.
Councillor Smith? No? Other councillors? Councillor Ronco?
So yeah, our was question. Oh, plenty of go. Yeah, it's some recurrent question that I have too. So it's Council is projecting an operating surplus of 2.12 million and an underlying operating deficit of 1.22 million. So some questions come back again. So how many times in the last 10 years has the Alpine Shire Council been facing underlying operating deficit? So I think you also a bit before. What are the main factors contributing to this underlying operation deficit?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. So the main factors which are causing us to move into a financially unsustainable position are cost shifting from the various other levels of government. So from the Australian and the state government, we've had many years of shifting of costs onto local government. The other thing, over recent years, since we've had rate capping, we've had CPI, so inflation rates have exceeded the cap. So we've been exposed to increases in cost on the materials and services that we deliver in many areas that have exceeded our ability to increase our revenue to accommodate those increases. So those two, between them, have contributed to a declining financial sustainability for Council.
So, and how has the Alpine Shire Council react to this underlying operation deficit?
So in the development of the 25-26 draft budget and then working through to the final, there's been significant work by the officers and together with the councillors to really sharpen the pencil across the whole budget. So together with the directors and the managers in the organisation, we've been through every one of hundreds of line items of individual budget items and really scrutinised the need for the expenditure, the amount of the expenditure, and whether we're able to do things smarter or differently. So we've really sharpened the pencil. If you look at the difference between this year's materials and service expenditure and last year's, you'll see that we're actually reducing materials and services expenditure, and there's been quite a significant drop between last year and this year in our materials and services expenditure. So knowing that we're in a financially challenging situation, we've really scrutinised the budget and every line item to make sure that it's needed, it's appropriate, and it's going to deliver value for the ratepayers.
And does a budgeted underlying operation deficit always result in an underlying operation deficit at the end of the financial year?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. So I've explained that if we took a 10-year period from 2014-15 and looked at our budget reports, you see 8 of those 10 years we've had an underlying deficit that we've forecast in the budget. If you take the same exercise with our audited financial reports, so it's the actual position achieved at the end of that financial year, in 6 out of 10 of those financial years, we've ended up with an operating surplus, an underlying operating surplus. So we've started the year in a poorer position in many of those years than we've ended the year. And we achieve that by chasing revenue and looking for opportunities to reduce expenditure, which is an ongoing process throughout the year.
And last one, so will the Alpine Shire Council be able to deliver its services and finance the objective for the council plan?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. So we've got a piece of work that we're legislated to deliver between now and the end of October, which is a 10-year financial plan. And that is where the focus of the organisation now is on looking forward for the next 10 years and understanding what are the assumptions that lead into the development of that model and what are the levers and the opportunities for council to move itself onto a more sustainable trajectory. So that's the work that's ongoing at the moment. The council plan that we've put forward as a draft, which is being worked through by council at the moment, we're confident that the delivery within year 1 is aligned with the budget that we've got on the table today. And we'll work through the future years as we work through the financial plan.
Thank you.
Other councillors? I wanted to pick up the operating surplus just as a concept. So I'm not sure again whether it's Mr Cook or Mr Jeremy who'd like to answer this one. So we often asked as an organisation that if we've got that surplus, why can't we do X, Y and Z? So I guess the question is, does the value of an operating surplus, like the amount, translate into cash that we can do whatever we want with, or is it tied? Is it got some other criteria, so we can't just, it's not discretionary?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. So if I could explain very simply the difference between an operating surplus or an operating result and an adjusted underlying result, it comes down to 2 things. One is capital grants and the other is non-monetary items. So let me talk them through. Capital grants, the government, typically the state or the federal government, determines that we're worthy of giving additional funds, but what they typically do is they tie it to a specific project. So we apply for funding, the government says we're going to grant you this funding, but you can only spend it on that project. So that's the capital grant side. Non-monetary contributions are assets that developers gift to council. It's called a gift, but ultimately it means there's an asset that council receives onto its books, which it then needs to maintain and renew into the future. That doesn't have a monetary value, so we don't receive money, but we receive an asset that has value, and then it ends up on our surplus. So if you look at our result for this year, you're going to see a large operating surplus, and that is because we've received a large number of capital grants, which are tied to specific projects. And we're also forecasting to receive non-monetary assets. But it isn't cash in the bank that we can spend on operating. We can't maintain our assets with them. We can't deliver the operations of the organisation. So in order to see the true position of council, you strip out the capital grants that are non-recurrent, you strip out the non-monetary items, and you really get to see what is the underlying position of council. So with all those one-offs and the big picture, what do you see as the true operating position? How much money has council got coming in to fund its operations, and how much does it need to spend on its operations? And that's where we're seeing a deficit. There's a shortfall between what money is coming into council and what money council needs over the next 12 months to fund its operations. And that position looks the same for the next 10 years at the moment. We do not see an improving financial position. And that's where we as an organisation need to do work together with council in order to correct that and put us back on a financially sustainable trajectory.
Thank you, Mr Jeremy. Now, Councillor Ronco referred to the long-term financial plan as well. Could you please tell the gallery when it's due?
Thank you, Councillor Nickus. We're legislated to present to Council for adoption by the end of October this year a 10-year financial plan.
Thank you. And that will be developed with the councillors and will be addressing the deficit through that process.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. And that is a document which is a public document. It is made available to the community from there to comment and provide feedback on. So it'll certainly be a document that we communicate with the community on.
Thank you. Any further comments? No. I just wanted to reiterate what Councillor Burns said. Thank you very much for the hard work that people put in, because you saw it and you were part of it. This started in November, believe it or not, or perhaps, well, probably earlier. It started with councillors in November. It probably started for staff in July. So thank you very much. I think it's a terrifically trimmed down budget from the one we first saw, and I know the hard work's gone in to make that happen. So let's see if we can deliver it, or even better, get some funding so we can deliver more. All those taking it to the vote? All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. The next item is 8.2.6, the Dinner Plain Reserve. Unanimously carried, I should have said, not just unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report details the proposed processes for management of the Dinner Plain Reserve and provides a recommendation for permitted expenditure to be funded from the reserve from the 1st of July 2025, which is aligned with the 25-26 budget. In March, at the March 2025 Ordinary Council meeting, Council resolved to prepare the draft budget on the basis that a special rate would not be declared for Dinner Plain Village for the 25-26 financial year, to include Dinner Plain in the definition and scope of the commercial industrial differential rate in the draft revenue and rating plan, and undertake public consultation on that draft, and to quarantine the Dinner Plain Reserve from 30 June 2025 with no further income to be allocated to the reserve after 30 June 2025. And also to consider a recommendation at a future council meeting in relation to permitted expenditure from the reserve from the 1st of July. So this is that recommendation. It is proposed that the reserve is maintained to fund approved service delivery and capital projects to be delivered specific to Dinner Plain. A review of the budget in 25-26 budget has been undertaken, and a few items of expenditure is identified to be accounted from the reserve in 25-26. Those 5 items are on your screen as part of the recommendation. They are the Dinner Plain bus, Dinner Plain snowmaking, Dinner Plain snow play slope management, the Bra Prolong trail grooming, and the Dinner Plain tennis court resurfacing. The total value of those items that is recommended to account from the reserve in the following year is $431,182. All service and employee-related expenditure outside of these items, which directly service Dinner Plain, will be approved through Council's annual budgeting process, and expenses would be accounted for within the general expenditure of Council. Your recommendation is on your screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors, moved Councillor Ronco, seconded Councillor Townsend. Councillor Ronco.
Just a couple of questions. So, which of the identified expenditure are recurrent for the future years?
I might refer this to Director Rees.
Thank you, Director Cook, and thank you, Councillor Ronco. So the question is, which of these are recurrent?
Recurrent for the future years, because...
So Dinner Plain snowmaking, Dinner Plain snow play, and the Babylon Trail are recurrent I suppose, services that are linked to existing contracts. The Dinner Plain bus has been on an annual review cycle, and the Dinner Plain tennis court resurfacing is a capital project.
Thank you. And you're the second. So has recurrent Dinner Plain expenditure for the future years been identified and planned for by the Alpine Shire Council budget for when the Dinner Plain reserve will be exhausted?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. So as with all services and projects across the Shire, when the Dinner Plain Reserve is exhausted or if it is a service or project that has not been approved to come out of the Dinner Plain Reserve, then that will simply be accounted for out of general revenue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Councillor Tanton? No. Any other councillors? Questions, comments? Dinner Plain Reserve? No. Take this one to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. And we move on to item 8.2.7, 22 Mill Road, Mount Beauty planning. Ms. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates to planning application 2024010, 22 Mill Road, Mount Beauty. The proposal is for use of the land for group accommodation, being 2 dwellings, construction of a building and carrying out works, construction and put up for display a business identification sign. The proposal is to construct 2 double-storey A-frame dwellings for short-stay group accommodation on Mill Road, along with a ColourBond aircraft hangar able to accommodate 2 planes with direct taxiway access to the Mount Beauty Air Park runway at the rear. The development targets short-term visitors with private aircraft seeking secure on-site storage and tourist accommodation with direct airfield access. In February of 2025, the development proponents lodged an appeal with Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, being VCAT, under Section 79 of the Planning Environment Act 1987 in relation to a failure to determine the permit application within prescribed timeframes. VCAT has ordered Council to put forward a position on the application, including draft conditions in the event a permit should be granted. This report therefore recommends a position for Council to put to VCAT to assist the Tribunal in resolving the matter. We have presented in the appendix conditions for Council's consideration, and we have a position and recommendation on the report. However, there has been some late changes to the conditions in the appendix, specifically at condition 2D and 16. Are you able to get those on the screen? These have been tracked. These are 2 conditions that will be slightly different for this recommendation. So 2D being a removal of a requirement to install fencing around a recreation area, and 16 being a tidy up of the drafting regarding engineering requirements. So for the minutes, there are some changes to the conditions, and there is a commensurate change to the recommendation to accommodate this, which is also now on your screen. So there is a tracked change at point 5 of the recommendation that simply confirms the change to the conditions in the attachments. The recommendation in totality is on your screen. However, the recommendation is that Council advises VCAT that had an application for review under Section 79 of the Planning Environment Act not been lodged in relation to this matter, Council would have issued a notice of decision to grant a planning permit, and the permit would have authorised the use for land for the group accommodation being 2 dwellings, construction of a building and carrying out of works, construction and display of a business identification sign for the reasons which are contained within the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors. Moved, Councillor Anderson. Seconded, Councillor Graham. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Graham? No. Councillor Ronco?
Just have the Alpine Shire Council receive any objection to this planning application?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. No, we did not.
Any further comments or questions? Take this one to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.2.8, another planning matter, stone extraction and earthworks at 1001 Great Alpine Road, Freeburg. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates to planning application 2023-83, being stone extraction and earthworks at 1001 Great Alpine Road, Freeburg. The proposal is to use and develop the land for stone extraction and earthworks in a work measuring 0.98 hectares. Following the stone extraction process, the land is proposed to be rehabilitated through tree planting, land management and grazing. However, rehabilitation plans have not been provided as a part of the application. The application is considered to be inconsistent with the Alpine Planning Scheme and is recommended to be refused for the reasons which were outlined in the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors, mover and seconder. Moved Councillor Ronco, seconded Councillor Graham. Councillor Ronco.
No, nothing.
Councillor Graham.
No, nothing specific.
Any other councillors with questions? Councillor Byrne.
Given the state of the actual site, it's a shame we can't find a way to allow them to find a way to improve the site. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you for your comment. No question in that? No. Other councillors? No. Okay. Yeah. I've just got a timing question. So this is all under timing, I guess, a process for the proponent. So if this recommendation goes through, then they have the opportunity to take it to VCAT. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And what's the time limit around that, please, Ms Cook? 90.
There you go.
90 days. Thank you. Yep. Councillor Smith has a
Thank
question.
you.
Community, what objections were to this application? Was there many objections from people close proximity?
So my understanding is there were objections. I'd have to find the number.
Yep.
Five. Yes, you're right. 5 objections. Thank you.
Yep. Well done. Do they have no. Any further comments or questions? No. Councillor Graham?
Am I correct in saying this has already been at VCAT once?
Not the same application. There was an application on the same site that went to VCAT, yes.
Okay. Nothing further? Take it to the vote. All those in favour? The recommendation as it is. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we are up to 8, sorry, yours, you can put them on too. 8.2.9, statutory planning service delivery improvements. Ms Cook, this is a much awaited report, this one.
Thank you. It's on now. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to provide an overview of actions currently being undertaken to improve the service delivery and provide better customer service from our statutory planning area. In Victoria, local government authorities fulfil a series of responsibilities under the Planning and Environment Act, which include decision-making and on planning permits under delegation from the Minister of Planning. Over the last 3 years, there's been substantial turnover of staff within the statutory planning team, coupled with an increase in the volume and complexity of applications we receive, which has resulted in a degradation of statutory planning service delivery. A range of strategies are being employed to address the identified challenges in this area, and these are outlined in the report. To summary, we are focusing on resourcing and budget in the area. The statutory planning team resourcing and budget's been significantly increased in the 2025-26 budget, which you have adopted, and recruitment into the roles that have been identified and now being finalised. In addition, We recognise the feedback on customer service, and we are implementing a number of priority improvements in our customer service area from the team. There are a number of improvements outlined in the report, but a couple I will highlight for you includes having a planner on roster to provide for a designated planner as a main point of contact for general inquiries through customer service and to enable more pre-application meetings. And we are also proposing to have a monthly planner available at both Myrtleford and Mount Beauty locations to improve accessibility and residents to meet with a planner. In addition, we have identified a range of process improvement initiatives that we'll be progressively implementing over the coming year. One of these process improvements, which we believe will have great value within the team, is establishing a portfolio of statutory planners to provide a designated work program which will enable both a specialisation of skills within those planners and a single point of customer contact for like types of applications. The proposed portfolio structure that we're currently implementing is a portfolio for major development, residential development, farm zone and rural development, dinner plain, business and tourism. We are also undertaking a focused review currently of aged and complex applications to enable us to provide resolution for those applications in the coming months, and also so that we can take some key learnings out of those applications and incorporate them into our processes going forward. There's a range of other service delivery outlines in the report. We've also identified that Council's Greenlight portal requires some development. So Council's Greenlight planning portal is a main application interface for both statutory planning and building services. It's been implemented over the last couple of years at different times for both those services, and we have a number of issues with the implementation of that system. So Council's working with the vendor to address a number of these issues so that we can improve our proficiency in reporting as well as our efficiency in processing. So some of the challenges we have with reporting are due to shortcomings we have in the development of the system and our ability to get accurate information out of the system with regard to some of the KPI data. Aligned with that, performance monitoring and reporting is an increased focus, and we are planning regular reporting, as we said previously, through questions on notice. We are establishing a range of key performance indicators, and we'll be working with our developer to ensure that we can get accurate data to report against those. And we have instigated monthly reporting to both councillors and executive from the statutory planning team, which are an evolving reporting as we develop the sophistication of those reports. And we have proposed biannual reports to council meetings for transparency for the public as to what we are implementing. The recommendation is that Council notes the report and the actions being undertaken to improve the delivery of statutory planning services and the customer experience by the statutory planning team.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors? Mover and seconder? Moved Councillor Graham, seconded Councillor Smith. Councillor Graham? Councillor Smith?
No, nothing to add.
Any other councillors? Questions? Councillor Ronco?
Just a comment. Following my question at the May 2025 Alpanshire Council Ordinary Meeting about the Alpanshire planning team and how it's travelling, it is great to get a full report on the progress made in this essential council department, which deliver important services to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Anderson?
I know you talked about having a pre-planning, someone to talk to about pre-planning. What was the reasons around implementing that, having that person?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. So we do offer a pre-application planning service now for those, for residents or clients who wish to come in and have a discussion about the zone that their block might be in, what they might be choosing, what they may wish to discuss and how feasible it is. However, with the resourcing constraints we've had, it's been quite difficult for us to resource that. So with having a dedicated planner on roster, it means that when a phone call comes through, we have someone for those phone calls to be transferred through to, as long as they're not on the phone at the time, but it should mean better customer service, but it also means that they'll be on roster to attend to more pre-application planning meetings. So it means that there can be more either face-to-face or on-screen application meetings, and that better interface with customers prior to them actually submitting an application.
Is that another question, or you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've gone the wrong colour.
Yeah, we have.
Swap again, I love it.
Also, has there been any work done around the timing on communications to people and where their permits are? I know that's a sort of question within the community, is sort of they have to wait a long time.
So thank you, Councillor Anderson. There are a few things that we're working on in that space. One is really the resourcing of the team. So it's been incredibly difficult for the team to answer community inquiries as to status of planning applications when the resourcing's been low. But with the additional resourcing in the team, that should be improving now. And with some of our dedicated customer service improvement initiatives, we should be addressing some of the underlying issues that are also causing some friction from a customer service perspective. So we continue to welcome feedback. It is going to take us a while to work through the implementation initiatives we have in place. We anticipate us working through this for the next year, but we're already seeing improvements. Our team is not quite full. We have a couple of positions being advertised at the moment. If anyone watching knows some wonderful statutory planners who may choose to join our team. And so we haven't quite got a full team, but we're fairly close, especially comparative to what we had previously. And we're already seeing an improvement, one, in our ability to respond to customers, and two, to have planners who are across the files so they can answer questions. And often that's the issue. Often it's hard for a planner, if they're not managing that file, to be across the issue to provide meaningful customer service. So we're finding the balance through that.
Thank you very much.
Any other councillors? I'm going to re-ask the question that Tora answered because it was my question too. And some people might tune in at different times, so I missed the questions on notice. But I was going to find out from our experts when the KPIs that are developed will be presented to council in the first instance, and then also, I guess, how much we can lean on the local government reporting framework requirements to help inform our KPIs, so we're not double dipping or creating work for ourselves, but still have really good KPIs.
Very good question. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The local government reporting framework KPIs are solid KPI data. And we would probably use them as the basis of our KPI data. So they deal with issues such as statutory timeframes for decision making, cost per application, and so they are really good KPIs for us to start with. We are working through at the moment whether we would like to add some additional KPIs to that tranche of data that we're collecting. The challenge we really has in the accuracy of the reporting where we can pull out of the system, and then how we can report against those KPIs. But we're confident in the next few weeks we'll have a much stronger position on our reporting.
Sure. And the answer to the question about when we'll see them is October. In April.
October.
Yeah.
Yes, October.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else from anybody? No? Just before we go to the vote, I'd actually like to again thank the people who pulled this together. We've been, we've heard again and again from our community that the planning is one of the things that we do the worst at, and looking at what's proposed I'm really looking forward to the improvements I think this is going to deliver, not least having lots of people bums on seats, but also the ideas about how to improve. So well done, and I'm looking forward again, as I said, to seeing the outcomes. Okay, let's take this to the vote. All those in favour? Oh yeah. That's unanimously carried. Thank you, and we move on to 8.2.10. Okay, 10. Councillor Internal Resolution Procedure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following the introduction of the Model Councillor Code of Conduct in October 24, all councils are now required to prepare and adopt their own Councillor Internal Resolution Procedure by the 1st of July 2025. This report presents the procedure for adoption within that statutory timeframe. The Internal Resolution Procedure is designed as a first step to deal with internal disputes between councillors where there are allegations of breaches in the Model Code of Conduct. The procedure operates as a preliminary process that should occur prior to initiating a formal internal arbitration process, as is described in the Local Government Act 2020. And the recommendation is that Council adopts the Councillor Internal Resolution Procedure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors. Councillor Tanzin. Councillor Graham. Councillor Tanzin. Councillor Graham. Anybody? No. Okay, well, I'm going to. I don't want to ask a question. I just want to say that I hope we never have to use it. But it's great that we'll have it in place sometime. So we'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? Yep, carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is the procurement policy, 8.2.11.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The procurement policy is a key instrument of council that outlines the principles and standards of the purchase of goods, service and works by council. The purpose of this report is to present proposed amendments to council's procurement policy in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020. Policy updates include a broadened definition of social value parameters, reference to the fair access policy, clarification of the circumstances in which a procedural exemption may be sought, and clarification on processes for approval of budgeted contract variations, as well as an addition of definitions. The next review date of the policy would be December 2029. However, an earlier review of this policy may be undertaken if it's identified that it's required. The recommendation is that council notes the procurement policy and the changes that have been made to the procurement policy, adopts the procurement policy while revoking the previous procurement policy, and signs and seals the procurement policy at the appropriate stage of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors, Councillor Byrne. Seconder, Councillor Tanzan. Councillor Byrne.
There we go. It works this time. Director Cook, could you outline what the broadened definition of social value parameters is for this document?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Yes, in the current procurement policy, we have an allowed criteria regarding social. However, the way that social criteria is implemented in the selection criteria through a procurement process is largely related to local business. So it allows a weighting to be applied that provides a slight advantage to a local business over a business that's further away. However, within this policy, we've provided an expanded definition of social value, which will enable assessors of a procurement process to consider more social enterprise functions within that social value.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to ask a question? Got one. Is there training offered for people, or will there be training offered for people if this is adopted, to understand how to best apply it?
Very good question. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The procurement policy, as is being amended now, has minor adjustments to it, and where a lot of the definition of how the procurement policy is implemented is documented is within our procurement procedure, and that is in the process of being updated now so it can reflect these changes too. And yes, we will be undertaking training across the organisation to ensure that people who undertake procurement are aware of their obligations. It is one of our key governance policies across the organisation. It's really important that people understand how the policy applies.
Wonderful. Thank you. Further comments, questions? No? Take this one to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation as it stands? Unanimous again. Beautiful. 8.2.12, appointment of independent audit and risk committee member.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report presents the Sorry, I've got the wrong report. This report is to recommend the reappointment of an independent member to Council's Audit and Risk Committee for a further 3-year term. Independent member Craig Kovich was first appointed in July 2019 and then reappointed in September 2022 for a second term which expires in September of this year. Mr Kovich has expressed his desire to continue to serve on the Council's Audit and Risk Committee for a third and final, under the terms of our charter, term, and the recommendation is that Council does reappoint Craig Kovich to the Audit and Risk Committee for a 3-year term expiring on the 6th of September 2028. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors. Councillor Byrne. Councillor Ronco. Councillor Byrne.
I'd just like to commend Craig for the wonderful work he puts into the Audit and Risk Committee, and happy to see him reappointed.
Councillor Ronco. Yep, all good. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any further comments, questions? No. Let's take this one to the vote. All those in favour? Okay. So 8.2.13, Audit and Risk Committee Annual Report, etc.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report presents the 2024-25 annual report on the activities and performance of the Audit and Risk Committee. Both the annual report and assessment of performance are requirements under Section 54 of the Local Government Act. The committee members and senior council management completed an online survey in April 2024. There was a 90% return rate on that survey. Respondents acknowledge the diversity and experience that is held within the current membership of the committee, the collaborative and open relationship that exists, and the support that is being provided by the committee to council and organisation as a result. In the detailed feedback, they also identify key opportunities for improvement, which I will summarise as development and implementation of an internal audit plan, which I can also confirm is being addressed with the recent appointment of our internal auditors. And also review and maintenance of Council's risk management framework, policy and register, and this matter is being addressed during 25-26 as a high priority. The recommendation is that Council notes the Audit and Risk Committee annual report, including their assessment of performance as per the detail on your screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. And councillors, mover and a seconder, please. Moved Councillor Anderson, seconded Councillor Byrne. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Byrne.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Ronco.
Just a couple of questions. So just in the Audit and Risk Committee annual report document on page number 8, the committee resolved not to endorse the statement and request an additional meeting in October 2025. And at the 8th October 2025 meeting, the committee was brief. Should it be October 2024 and the 8th of October 2024 and could be corrected?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. I believe that relates to the Audit and Risk Committee minutes. Yes, that's an error that can be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. Second question, so on page 10 and 11, opportunity for improvement, internal audit plan, it states Crowalbury to provide council internal audit services, including development of an internal audit plan supported by an annual budget allocation for 3 internal audits per year. How much will be the annual budget allocation cost, and from which year will this allocation start? Thank you.
I think you're talking about item 8.2.14.
No.
No? Page 10?
So I can address the question as to the audit, internal audit, because that's also, I just mentioned that within the current report. So we have allocated a budget of $150,000 for 3 years for provision of the internal audit services. In terms of what is in our 25-26 budget, it is a little front loaded to enable the work plan and underlying risk assessment information to be provided. So in the 25-26 budget, we've budgeted $50,000 for that piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and this start in this budget financial year, yeah. So it's 25, 2026. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, super. Anything else? The audit performance? No? Take it to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you. Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes, which have been confusing me, obviously. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present the unconfirmed minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting, which was held in May 2025. The committee met on the 16th of May 25 and considered several key items, including standard quarterly reports and standing items. The details of the items considered are summarised in your report, and it is recommended that Council receives and notes the unconfirmed minutes of the Audit Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Byrne.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Anderson.
Nothing to add.
Any councillor, any questions, anything to add? No? I am going to make a statement. Fancy that. The Audit and Risk Committee is an absolutely vital part of our organisation. It's legislative, but it's also is just an absolutely it's really spot on. It really pulls together how the organisation works, and it's a really good overview of what at the governance. And I would encourage absolutely every councillor to attend at least one meeting as soon as they can. I think Councillor Smith and Councillor Byrne are on it, and I reckon they'd nod and say it's pretty good. Councillor Ronco's been. I've been on it on previous ones for 4 years or so and still attend because you learn so much. So I just put that out there. And then now I'm going to take this recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. We're nearly at the end, Ms Cook. Ms Cook's final 15th paper is instruments of delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm finishing on an exciting one as well. So Council operates under more than 110 different pieces of legislation, each of which provides specific powers, duties or functions either to Council as the governing body or directly to the Chief Executive Officer to enable Council to, as an organisation, to run smoothly and to avoid the need for every legislative decision to be presented to a Council meeting. Many of these powers, duties and functions are passed on by instruments of delegation from Council to the Chief Executive Officer and members of Council staff. The delegation of Council's powers, duties and functions is a routine process presented at a Council meeting, which most recently was presented at the September Council meeting in 2024. Changes in legislation and staff titles are the key reasons that the instruments of delegation are being presented tonight, and the recommendation is that Council exercises its powers under the various sections of the Act as per the recommendation in your papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors. Councillor Graham, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Graham. Councillor Anderson. Any councillor question or comment? Good question. What would happen if we didn't do this?
Because this confers powers through the CEO and onto staff, we are able to undertake functions as legislated. If we didn't have conferred powers, that many of these decisions would need to come to a Council meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, any more questions, comments? Take this to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Super. Rightio. Director of Assets, Mr Alan Rees, it's your turn. 25 papers on the agenda today, so I think it's the biggest one I've ever seen in 8.5 years. Sorry? Yes. Thank you. Councillor Byrne is declaring a conflict of interest on 8.3.1 due to the where his land is. Director of Assets, 8.3.1. Councillor Byrne left the meeting 6:47 p.m.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To kick things off in this part of the business, we're kicking off with the Myrtleford flood study. The purpose of this report is to outline the key findings and recommendations of the Myrtleford flood study modelling report 2025 and to present the study for Council's consideration and adoption. Just by way of background, this study was commissioned by the Alpine Shire Council in partnership with the North East Catchment Management Authority as a high priority action from the North East Regional Floodplain Management Strategy 2018 to 2028, with the aim to deliver accurate and contemporary flood modelling and mapping for the Myrtleford Township and surrounding areas, which includes Barwigi, Buffalo River, Gapstead and Ovens. The modelling was prepared using the updated Australian rainfall and runoff and is compliant with the hydrologic and hydraulic tools and calibrated against historical flood events. One of the studies that informed this was the Myrtleford Breakaway Management Strategy from 2021, where this provided critical context for the flood study given the geomorphological arrangements in the Ovens Valley between the Ovens River and the Happy Valley Creek, just upstream from Myrtleford. Some of the key findings, the modelling outputs provide critical tools for a range of applications, including future development assessments, infrastructure planning, flood mitigation investigations, and improved emergency response planning. And ultimately, the study aims to reduce the flood risk to homes, businesses, and roads and support land use planning decisions and strengthen the community's resilience for future flood events. These outputs will be used to support a future planning scheme amendment that ensures planning controls reflect the contemporary flood risk and hazards facing those communities. The modelling shows flood levels increase under projected 2,100 climate change scenarios, placing greater risk on residential areas, particularly in Lewis and Standish streets. I think it's important to acknowledge the funding for this particular study and also the next report this evening. These have been jointly funded through council funds as well as the Department of Justice's Community Safety and Emergency Management Victoria program, as well as the North East Catchment Management Authority. So a real joint effort to undertake this important work. At this point in time, there are no financial implications for council based on the recommendations this evening. However, future actions would be subject to future budget processes and would be separately scoped in the future. These types of studies have significant implications for our community, and so there has been extensive consultation both internally with external stakeholders as well as 2 stakeholder engagement sessions in Myrtleford in 2024, where the draft findings were presented to the community and members of these various agencies. In conclusion, this study provides council with a robust contemporary assessment of flood risks across Myrtleford and surrounding communities, and it's recommended that council adopts this report as presented and prepares a planning scheme amendment to implement its findings and recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. Councillors, moved by Councillor Anderson and seconded by Councillor Graham. Councillor Anderson. Excuse the other one.
I think I've got it. We've been looking at this report, and it's quite an extensive report. I know that people will probably be hearing about it and thinking that this is, just to clarify for them, that this is a report, this is the information. It's not a decision as such by the councillors yet. It's been a really good insight into the impacts of potential climate change on our communities and how it's going to impact over time. Yeah, so that's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Thank you. It's been a long time, good to see it's here.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Councillor Ronco.
Yep, after the adoption of the Myrtleford Flood Study Modelling Report 2025, what will be the next steps for the Alpine Shire Council?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. So the next steps would be council officers would prepare a letter to the Minister requesting the Minister's authorisation to initiate the planning scheme amendment process. Once we hear back from the Minister, that will then result in a process of translating this report into a planning scheme amendment. So there is quite a lot of work that still lies ahead. I think it's also important to note that as part of that planning scheme amendment process, there will be an opportunity for community consultation and engagement, and we'd encourage the community to engage in that process, and there will be appropriate notifications that govern us, ensuring that the community is aware of that.
Thank you. And just as a comment, so I would like to apologize to the residents that the last few months have been quite busy for us. And I wish I will have more time to study this report with 239 pages and be able to support it with all the information supply. That's all. I wanted just to clarify that.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Any further comments or questions before I ask mine? No? Mr. Rees, are there currently houses built in Myrtleford on land that floods?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, there are. So, all the more reason for us to understand what the implications are for future flooding events, given what the modelling has demonstrated with updated rainfall and runoff, and also looking at the future likelihood of flooding events, particularly the 1 in 100 year.
Thank you. And my other question is, you did say that there was emergency services, something money involved, and I noted in the report coming that we're expecting improved emergency planning because of the study and potentially the further planning work. Is that the same for Myrtleford?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Further comment, question? No. Take this one to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. All those against? All those abstaining? Thank you. Carried. Yeah, thank you very much. And we move on to item 8.3.2, the Upper Ovens Regional Flood Mapping, etc. Thank you, Mr. Rees. Councillor Byrne returned to the room at 6:55.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report relates to the Upper Ovens Regional Flood Mapping Study of 2018, and then the more recent update of the modelling and climate change and updated rainfall for 2025. So the purpose of this report is to outline the key findings and recommendations of the Upper Ovens Flood Study 2018 and the updates undertaken in the study for 2025. So similar to the Myrtleford report previously, this study provides a regional scale flood mapping for the Upper Ovens River, including Morses Creek and the Buckland River, and incorporates the townships of Bright, Urobin, Harrietville, Popunka and Wandilligong. In 2025, the modelling was updated, and this was commissioned by the Alpine Shire Council to ensure that the existing flood models were able to incorporate the impacts of climate change using two long-term scenarios based on the climate change report. This approach aligns with the current Victorian practice and reflects the most accurate data available. And the outputs inform flood extents, depths, velocities, and hazard mapping across the catchment, and critically will support revised planning controls and emergency response updates. Some of the key findings, the study will ultimately aim to facilitate a reduction in flood risk to homes, businesses, and roads, and support land use decision making and strengthen community resilience to future flood events. It's important to note that the current planning controls are significantly outdated. The work that's been undertaken factors in a range of climate scenarios and particularly identifies an increased risk of flood. It also is done to ensure that residents and business owners who are typically unlikely to be aware of increased flood risk are made aware of it through this process. As mentioned earlier, this project was also co-funded through those agencies, namely the Alpine Shire Council, the department, and also the North East Catchment Management Authority. We anticipate that as the actions are brought forward, that external funding opportunities may be available, and officers will certainly be looking to leverage any of those opportunities. Again, extensive consultation was undertaken in 2018. However, this particular report has not yet gone to community consultation, but the community will be invited to participate and provide input through the planning scheme amendment process should council choose to adopt the recommendations of this report.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. Councillors, mover, seconder. Moved, Councillor Anderson. Seconded, Councillor Ronco. Councillor Anderson.
It says here you implemented the the climate change modelling was updated in 2025? Or is there a particular risk in not running climate change scenarios in a flood report?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. So one of the things that's important to do, as we've seen in 2018, work was done but never brought through to the planning scheme amendment process, and new information has been brought to light with the Australian rainfall and runoff statistics. And in order for us to inform the planning scheme amendment process and ensure that planning controls are based on the most accurate and up-to-date information, it's important that we follow best practice and incorporate those changes, including climate change.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco.
After the adoption of this study and update, will the Alpine Council engage a review of its drainage asset and make residents more aware and resilient during flood events?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Probably for the benefit of the community, I suppose the short answer is yes, of course, but I'd like to share a little bit more context just to provide a better understanding of how important these studies are and how they impact councils' planning and planning decision-making as well as infrastructure management. So councils, as the planning authority for their municipalities, determine what land has the potential to be affected by flooding and to ensure that appropriate flood controls apply to this land. This is done through the preparation of a flood study and its implementation in the Alpine Planning Scheme via a planning scheme amendment. This ensures that any new development considers flooding impacts and does not impede the conveyance of storage of floodwater on the floodplain. Additionally, regional and rural councils as drainage authorities plan for the 1 in 100 year level of drainage service. That is, for any given year, there is a 1% chance of a 1 in 100 year flood occurring. Any infrastructure needed must comply with Infrastructure Design Manual, requiring drainage systems to appropriately manage both minor and major storm events. The purpose of these requirements is to ensure that any increase in impervious surfaces resulting from development does not translate into increased runoff discharging directly into the downstream stormwater systems managed by council or other authorities. Instead, flows are temporarily restricted through on-site stormwater management infrastructure, such as detention basins, underground drainage networks, above-ground rainwater tanks, and other water-sensitive urban design measures where appropriate. So this work will inform those kinds of infrastructure requirements for future developments. Council is proactively working to address areas that were developed to lesser drainage service standards to ensure that they meet the 1 in 100 year level of drainage service. It is expected that the drainage strategies will be prepared for all major townships to guide this work. Council has also recently completed an audit of its drainage assets in each of the 4 major towns, being Bright, Mount Beauty, Toowoomba South, Myrtleford and Popanka, and this will greatly assist in undertaking this work in the near future. And that work will be subject to the allocation of appropriate budget in future financial years. So perhaps just to summarise the criticality of these sorts of studies and reports, because they do impact the longer term future of our communities, the resilience to flood and natural events. And so they're important for us to move towards a planning scheme amendment where they get given status and where the statutory planners are able to use that to inform their decisions on statutory planning applications.
Thank you.
Any further, Councillor Anderson?
So we've just been presented with the Myrtleford and the Upper Ovens flood mapping studies. Where's the Kiwa one?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. There is I guess, a backlog of these studies that have been undertaken. So these are the first 2 to be brought forward. There is also the Kiwa study, which we're working with the North East Catchment Management Authority on bringing forward. And then there's also the Popanka one, specifically to the challenges in Popanka. So you will be seeing them in the coming months.
Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mayor Nicholas. If you had a crystal ball, and you probably see where this is going to go, given there's a lot of work still to be done for both of these studies before they can be implemented, what would you think would be the best time frame would be before they could be implemented? And given this is your last council meeting, you may make whatever promises you like.
As long as we don't vote on them.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. I might have some other promises I could make then too. It is a protracted process, and it does depend on the pace and the partnership and the relationship that we have with the Minister's office. I would speculate that this is sort of a 6 to 9 month process at best. However, with council, in the event that council chooses to adopt the recommendations as they stand and these are carried, that will mean that these reports have status in our system, and that will enable them to be used to inform thinking already. The final step ultimately is to have it in the planning scheme and have that amendment carried. So, my recommendation would be to follow what we're recommending and adopt the report. But yes, it is a long drawn-out process. We do have a good team. The team are well prepared and ready to progress these as a matter of urgency, given the backlog.
Thank you. Further questions or comments on this matter? No? Take it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.3.3, glass and recycling service advocacy position. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is another report that has long-term implications for the community. It relates to the Alpine Shire Council's advocacy position regarding the Victorian Government requirement for local government to provide a separate glass-only recycling service by 1 July 2027 and for glass to be removed from the commingled recycling stream. A group of 31 councils are advocating to the Victorian Government to delay the implementation date for the glass-only bin, as their research has found that there are limited benefits for a glass-only service in comparison to the implementation costs for ratepayers. And currently 21 of the 31 councils have declared their position to be publicly named in the advocacy group. Just by way of background, all Victorian councils will soon be required by the government to implement a 4-stream waste and recycling system for all households via either a curbside or drop-off service. And this was mentioned in the Recycling Victoria Policy 2020. So the 4 streams are the red bin, the yellow bin, the green bin, and now the purple lidded bin for glass recycling. Since the release of Recycle Victoria's policy, a number of councils have been calling on the government to release the business case for the glass-only bin to help effectively communicate the benefits of this change to ratepayers. The timeline of the release of the draft regulations in August 2024, still to be finalised in June 2025, is now more than 4 years into the delivery timeframe for councils to implement the new service. The draft service standards did not provide clarity on why glass-only service was chosen as the preferred option, and the financial assumptions throughout did not accurately reflect the overall cost to local government for providing this service. The group of councils have undertaken some independent research and modelling to understand the business implications, and this research has found that there are limited benefits to the glass-only service in comparison to the implementation costs for local government. Just by way of the financial implications for the Alpine Shire, the initial rollout of the separate glass curbside collection service will cost approximately $460,000 for the bin infrastructure alone, and this will result in an annual increase of $72 per year to each rateable property to cover that rollout cost. And then once the service is implemented, there will be an ongoing annual cost for the glass service of approximately $327,000, which will translate into an annual cost of $51 per rateable property. We've engaged with our curbside collection contractor to understand the benefits for the Alpine Shire, and they have indicated that their current material resource facility is able to cope with the commingled waste as it's currently presented, and so removing glass would have no benefit environmentally. In fact, it will result in more trucks doing more kilometres, more plastic bins in the community, which is counterintuitive to the objectives of this initiative. So the recommendation is, as stated, for Council to state its advocacy position to the Victorian Government.
Councillors. Councillor Tanzan. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Tanzan.
There we go. Is there any other alternatives for glass recycling around at the moment, other than just plastic bins?
Thank you, Councillor Tanzan. So yes, everyone will be aware of the container deposit scheme, and we've found that certainly in New South Wales and now in Northern Territory, that scheme is being expanded. The type of glass that's being accepted has been expanded as well. And so part of our reasoning or recommendations this evening is to allow enough time to do the due diligence on the business case to understand what alternatives are out there, what the cost benefits would look like, to provide a more informed background for a decision.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson? No. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, with this other group of councils, will we get an update from them, or we should be joining with them to see, what is an alternative? Like, I don't see passing on this cost. I know our residents wouldn't be happy with it from the general feedback I've had. So I think holding off is the right thing for us to do, but will we get some updates, or we need to join into this to push this with them, or what's your recommendation here?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. So yes, the recommendation is for us to do two things. One, to join and benefit from the joint research and modelling, as well as to have our own position and continue to advocate on behalf of our community, so that we are able to work on both fronts. There's certainly merit in engaging with a larger group of organisations. There's critical mass, there's obviously resources,
Yep.
and we'll be able to share in the outcomes of their research.
It's a pretty good cross between the councils. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Ronco?
The other cost benefits analysis have been conducted by state government. Cost benefits.
As stated in the report, Councillor Ronco, we're still awaiting the final business case to help us inform how we communicate the benefits to our community.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Graham?
Thank you, Mayor Nicholas. I see no benefit on us separating our glass, because currently it goes to the Albury MRF, and the glass that we put into a glass bin will just get joined up with the other commingled recycles. So no financial benefit, just a financial cost to the ratepayers, and put in more trucks on the road for no benefits.
Further comments? No? I've got a couple of questions, Ms. Therese. The council group that's the coalition of councils with their aligned concerns are writing to the minister, and we're suggesting we will. Do you know if their letter is likely to include alternatives, or is it just to make sure that do the work to do the cost-benefit analysis, or do you not know yet?
Thank you, Mayor Nicholas. No, I don't know the content of that letter at this point in time.
but we can add in the alternatives or some other ideas if we choose. Yep. And my next question is about the risk of not implementing the purple bin and what the consequences may be.
Well, as I've stated in the report, there are a number of consequences for consideration. We may go through the process of the advocacy and then still not be successful and therefore have to implement the service anyway against a very tight timeline. I think there's also the reputational risk with our relationship with the state government. We work closely with them. We try to always find solutions in partnership. So there could be some risk with us perhaps disagreeing with their implementation timelines. I think the intention here is that we work through this in a pragmatic way to come to a decision point that's informed on the basis of a broader set of data. And so our recommendation is really to enable a little bit more time to be able to complete that work to inform a decision.
Thank you. Anything else, councillors? Take it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.3.4, Wandy Walk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report relates to the status and outcomes of the investigation of public and private land associated with the Wandy Walk. By way of background, the Wandy Walk follows Morses Creek from its confluence with the Ovens River in Centenary Park in Bright through to Wandilligong. The walking path is predominantly located on Crown land alongside the Morses Creek. And at two locations, Morses Creek has migrated into separate parcels of freehold land which are currently under different ownership. The owners of this freehold land have previously permitted public access across their land, facilitating a continuous walking trail along the western side of Morses Creek into Alpine Park in Wandilligong. In May 2023, both landowners advised council that they would be ceasing the provision of public access to their private land. Council then engaged two specialists to assess the situation, the history and relevant law to provide feedback to council on the options available and the viability of each option to re-establish the walk on the western side of Morses Creek. There are two pieces of legislation that have provided the guidance which we're recommending this evening. The first is the Water Act in 1995, which states that if the watercourse has shifted as a result of sudden or man-made influence, the allotment boundaries remain in the same location, i.e. they do not move. And the Land Act of 1958 states that if the watercourse alters course, the reserve that was created at the time of alienation, i.e. the declaration of lot boundaries, do not move with it and remains in the location at the time of reservation. In other words, the freehold or reserve boundary does not move. The challenge is that Morses Creek has migrated into private land, and as such, both experts have concluded that based on the applicable law, there is no longer any public land between the freehold properties and Morses Creek, and no public right of way across freehold properties. All options have been explored with both landowners, but have ultimately not resulted in a pathway to re-establishing public access across freehold land where this was previously permitted. There was extensive engagement, obviously the specialists themselves. We also engaged with the landowners to explore options. And as such, the recommendation this evening is for council to note this reality, and also that officers will be progressing actions to ensure that all the public land adjacent in the subject area remains appropriately accessible to the public, and that signage is appropriately located where it's required.
Thank you, Mr Rees. Councillors. Councillor Ronco's moved. Need a seconder. Councillor Tansen. Councillor Ronco.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Have the doctrine of accretion available on the Victoria Government Department of Transport and Planning been explored for this matter?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Yes, the doctrine of accretion has been explored and been determined that even if it was applicable, which is very unlikely, really doesn't provide a pathway for us and is not really relevant or worth considering, as both parties, being council and the private landowners, would end up in court, and the law would not benefit either party. So it has been looked at but determined not to be of relevance.
Thank you. And I would like also to reassure our residents that we, councillor and council officer, will continue to investigate our ability to maintain the Wandy Walk as a continuous trail. So just try to confirm that we are all for it. Thank you.
Councillor Tansen.
Nothing from me.
Anybody else? I just wanted to, I guess, elaborate a little bit on Councillor Ronco's comment and ask Mr Rees about the potential ways forward, please.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. So the first step really is to do a boundary establishment survey to understand exactly where private and Crown land boundaries are. And then it would be a matter of assessing opportunities to create crossing points, perhaps, on the upstream and downstream sides of the private land. There are some other things that we will explore to see what access we can provide or enable for the community. But any crossing points would probably involve bridges, which would then need to be looked at from a funding perspective. And those will be subject to future budget processes and project pipeline discussions.
Thank you, Mr Rees.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Recommendation 3, I believe the word adjacent is superfluous, and I recommend that we consider removing that.
Perfect.
I would also like to make a note for the record that whilst the recommendation of the officers is to continue looking at a way to establish the Wandy Walk as a continuous walking trail, it is not at this stage the intention of the officers to continue exploring the opportunity to access across this freehold land. So to make it clear, we're drawing a line under the opportunity to access across the freehold land and looking at ways to bypass that freehold land on either side in order to maintain the trail.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr Jeremy. Any further comments from or questions from councillors? No? We'll take this recommendation to the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Unanimous and carried. Thank you. 8.3.5, purchase of discontinued road, Mount Beauty Airport.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates to the purchase of the discontinued government road to the north of the existing Mount Beauty Airport runway. Council had previously endorsed the discontinuance of the road at the council meeting on the 9th of November 2021. This discontinuance has been completed, and the Minister of Finance has approved the sale of the land to council as outlined in the report. Should this recommendation be carried, the next steps would enable us to finalise that discontinuance through the acquisition of the land and draw a line under this process. In terms of financial implications, a budget allocation has been made for the forthcoming budget, which was adopted earlier this evening to enable the acquisition of the land. And just by way of record, a public notice regarding the discontinuance of the road was published in the Alpine Observer in September 2021, and no submissions were received.
Thank you. Councillors, move on a seconder. Moved Councillor Smith, seconded Councillor Tansen. Councillor Smith.
No, nothing to add.
Councillor Townsend? Anybody? No. Councillor Ronco?
Have all the options available been explored to get the best possible outcome for our residents? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Yes, good question. So a number of months ago, we presented this report for consideration and then asked for it to be laid on the table to enable us to explore an alternative option for us to become the Committee of Management. We've now completed that work, and the recommendation that's been put this evening for Council's consideration, we believe is the best value for money to enable us to draw a line under this process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Anybody? Anything further? I'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Mount Beauty Airfield Upgrade Project, lessons learned, 8.3.6. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates to the Mount Beauty Airport Upgrade Project and the lessons learned regarding the management of scope change in particular. And the purpose of the report is to conclude the successful delivery of this significant upgrade project, which has been in genesis since prior to 2005 and has involved 16 reports to council meetings over that period of time, including the two this evening. Following the successful completion of the project, I'm pleased to say that the operational management responsibilities have now returned to the Mount Beauty Airport Management Association. By way of background, I think, it's quite impressive and probably humbling to have learnt that the original inception of the design of this airport involved the consideration of future expansion works. And so that's exactly what has enabled the lengthening of the runway to actually be completed. In the report, there's a bit of a potted history of the various interventions and things that happened along the way, but I'd like to just draw attention to three particular issues which I think are worth noting and really do inform the lessons learnt. The first was a change of scope that was necessary to ensure that the funding agreement reflected scope that could actually be delivered given the constraints of the terrain and also within works that could actually be afforded. And that was undertaken in 2020 through to May 2021. And the main change that occurred there was when the actual funding application was submitted, it indicated that there was a recommendation to change the status of the airfield to a registered airport, and that needed to be changed. And so the decision by council at the time was to retain the status of an aircraft landing area. And the significance of that is that at an aircraft landing area, the pilot is the responsible agency to utilise that facility at their own risk. The second change of scope occurred once construction had actually commenced, and this involved a request from the Airport Management Association to increase the area of the apron as well as some additional widening of the runway. And this was requested only in the event that the funding was available to complete that. And following an engineering design and some pricing that we obtained, council made a decision to approve those works, which resulted in important improvements to the overall operating environment for that, for the aircraft, for the runway and the apron, particularly to enable aircraft to park on a hard stand rather than on the grass, which was important for larger aircraft. The third scope change relates to a further additional bit of scope around the hangar apron, where we were requested, if funding permitted, to upgrade the surface from a poor quality spray seal to an asphalt surface. And based on a cost estimate and the assumption that it was a simple surface replacement and upgrade, the decision was made that it could be afforded, and the contractor was asked to complete those works. But we failed to undertake an engineering design to ensure that the levels and grades and so on were as required to a particular standard. So after the works had been completed, unfortunately, the unintended consequence was during certain weather conditions, water ingress into hangars 9 and 10 occurred. And in order to rectify that, we then did need to get an engineering solution prepared, and we advised the owners of hangars 9 and 10, in particular hangar 10, of that intention to conduct the works as designed. But when we went to tender, the price came back, and we realised that the cost was significantly greater than initially thought. And so we proposed to pause the commencement of the works to explore alternative, more cost-effective options. However, our communication with the hangar owner was particularly poorly done and resulted in the final outcome that we delivered the works as we had committed to them in writing. So a number of lessons learnt. Sorry, before I jump to that, the rectification works for hangar 9 and 10 were finally completed in March 2025. So a long project, finally completed. Lessons learned really revolved around scope management, and particularly when scope changes. And I think there's been a bit of a benefit in our flexible management of these opportunities, and it's resulted in a better outcome for the project. However, we do need to update our procurement procedure to implement a formal go, no-go decision point for contract variations that include engineering design, as well as ensuring that when we do make changes, when we communicate with stakeholders and customers, we must be careful not to commit council to works without understanding the costs that are involved. And finally, in terms of customer engagement, we understand and will take this on board that proactive and early engagement with our customers is critical when initial commitments are at risk of change due to new information or shifting circumstances. And this is vital to ensure that we continue to build trust with our customers. In order to just wrap up, I guess from a financial perspective, we had $3.1 million under the RAP funding agreement. The actual construction works of the runway widening and extensions came in at just under that, so a good result from a funding perspective. However, council also contributed a further $265,000 to costs that were not eligible under the RAP agreement, and then a further $61,000 to repair the unintended consequences around hangars 9 and 10. So for the purposes of this evening, we'd like council to note the success of finally implementing this upgrade, and also the implementation of the learnings and the improvements to our procurement procedure for managing contract variations.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Councillor Byrne has moved the recommendation. Councillor Ronco seconded. Councillor Byrne.
I'd like to note the improvements in the procurement policy that have been added since this lesson, and think that's a wonderful step forward for council.
Thank you. Councillor Ronco.
Just learning from this important project, will the Alpine Shire Council implement new safeguard and control to ensure that the project is planned, communicated and delivered to ensure the best possible outcome for our residents?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Yes, so the procurement policy was adopted earlier this evening. These changes will be made to the procurement procedure, which is the detail of where officers are guided in terms of the actions and steps that need to be taken as they undertake procurement going forward.
Thank you.
Further comments or questions from councillors? No, nothing to add. I've just got a comment. 2005, 20 years ago, first master plan was put forward. Really ambitious to put together an aerodrome and an air park, and I think it's fantastic that we're well and truly on the way. And well done everybody who's contributed to it, and particularly to pick up the learnings from the latest process that we've been involved in. So look forward to it rolling out even further. And with that, take it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. 8.3.7, risk management at the Bright and Porepunkah River pools.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report provides an update to Council regarding the aquatic risk assessments and safety management initiatives at the Bright and Porepunkah River pools. Just by way of background, the Bright and Porepunkah River pools are important local attractions during the summertime and are operated by Belgravia Leisure on behalf of Council during the summer periods. Council has undertaken a number of initiatives to address these risks and manage them as best as possible by mitigating, in order to mitigate drowning at the river pools, particularly at the Bright Pool. And this report outlines these initiatives. The actions that have been undertaken since October 2023 include changes made to the excavation area in front of the jumping platform, addition of a lifeguard on a rescue board in the water for early intervention, which has proved to be very successful, signage that's been updated and replaced the jumping platform entrance, warning patrons of the risks, as well as personal rescue equipment being installed at both of those facilities. What we've found over the time, in particular following the annual debriefs with Belgravia, is that there's been a significant increase in the culturally and linguistically diverse patrons over the Christmas period in Bright and Porepunkah. And with most of the rescues occurring during this period of time, Council officers have investigated what additional water safety education initiatives may be required to ensure that all patrons are aware of this matter. In addition, the majority of rescues, 69% of all rescues during last summer, were associated with the jumping platform, and Council officers are currently investigating a replacement jumping platform gate and fence that will comply with the swimming pool standard to better manage access to the jumping platform in order to mitigate these risks. And Council officers have applied for funding through for a master plan to the Australian government in order to look at how we might improve the overall amenity and functioning of that area. Probably in conclusion, and given that this is such an important asset, or both of them are, but particularly in Bright, Council officers will continue to monitor the incidents and statistics and prioritise the replacement of that existing gate and fencing around the jumping platform at the Bright River Pool going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. Councillors, moved. Councillor Tanzin, seconded. Somebody, whoever the second is, Councillor Anderson, thanks. Councillor Tanzin.
Yeah, I'd just like to know what other options have been discussed other than increasing the height of the diving board.
Well, a range of things have been looked at over time. So there's been, as we say in the report, due to the risk profile a number of years ago, a recommendation was put to Council to consider removing that jumping platform due to the level of risk. That recommendation was overturned, and since then we continue to work with Belgravia to improve signage, improve the actual lifeguard services, not only ashore but also in the water. And that's made a big difference, and the majority of the saves or rescues are actually made by the lifeguard on a board in the water. We've also updated signage. We have QR codes on the signage that makes it easily accessible to culturally and linguistically diverse communities, to make it easily accessible. We've also followed the Life Saving Victoria recommendations. So from a I guess all reasonably practical measures. We believe we're doing as much as we can at this point in time, and the upgrade of the fence will provide a facility that meets a recognised swimming pool standard, which is currently not the case.
Thank you.
Councillor Anderson?
I guess I'll just say there's sort of two sides to this. This is a very iconic part of Bright. I don't think there'd be many people who really want to see us getting rid of the river pool. Also, there's another side is that there's a substantial risk to council in the fact that this is it's a pool essentially in a river that we're making. So we're therefore making the risk to people. So I guess, have we got anything in the way of protecting the council in the event of risk or this sort of risk that, how am I trying to put it, that the legal implications of drowning risk?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. As I outlined earlier, our responsibility, so we create the hazard by putting the weir boards in. And as such, it's our responsibility to take all reasonably practical measures to manage those risks. And at this point in time, following Lifesaving Victoria's recommendations and best practices, we're taking all reasonably practical measures to mitigate the risk, number one, but also to be able to demonstrate council's responsibility in managing that risk in the event that an incident does occur.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith?
Yeah, on the similar lines, I see, again, both sides to it, but just increasing the fence, I can see from a lot of hearing people's talk, they talk about this a lot to me, and it takes away the fun, and I understand both sides. I understand it's the litigation side of it, the insurance side of it, but putting a high fence, I can just see some locals just climbing that, and then I see more injury or more risk of people having accidents just trying to climb a high fence. Or I'm just trying to. It's a real hard one, this, because I see both arguments and I understand both sides of it very well, but it's a real hard one, and I'm just thinking we're missing something, or is there what else? It's really it's a process now. Just the feedback. Why are they taken away? Why are they going to take away our diving board and do this or put a bigger fence? It's just like we're almost provoking. There's an element out there that are saying, "Are you really going to do this?" Or they hear, but I don't know. But it looks like we've explored every avenue. There's nothing we're missing, as far as you can see.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Yes, this is it's one of those probably wicked dilemmas, really. And our responsibility is to take all reasonably practical measures. At this point in time, I suppose the fence that is in place does not comply with the standard. Based on looking at best practice, talking with Lifesaving Victoria, looking at what else we could be doing, we believe that raising the height will enable us to demonstrate that we are compliant with a known standard. I think it's going, we will never stop the people that want to do whatever they want to do. And unfortunately, that's something that we have to factor into our overall considerations. We believe that by taking this measure, it will put council in take the appropriate measures to manage that risk, as well as ensure that the community, have access to a facility that complies with a particular standard.
Thank you for that, because it's the same as the slide across the other side, why that was taken away, exactly the same process and argument, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And Councillor Graham.
Thank you. Given that we've recognised this risk, will the modifications to the jumping platform be implemented before the next summer season? And B, if it isn't, will we be having to remove the existing barricades as they are at the moment because we've recognised there is a risk?
Thank you, Councillor Graham. So the plan is to have the appropriate upgrade done prior to the coming season, which commences at Christmas time.
Okay, good.
To answer your second half of the question, will we be removing the existing? The answer is no, we will not be removing them until we're ready to implement the upgrade.
Yeah, we won't need to remove the existing one if there's a new one in place. That's okay.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
There we are. Councillor Tansen.
So considering we will be raising the height of the fence, I'm assuming that'll be a completely new fence. What will we be doing to mitigate the visual impacts?
Thank you, Councillor Tansen. Yes, we haven't quite yet commenced the final design, the detailed design, but you know, there are materials that we can use that mitigate that. The actual design typically has got spacing in it that avoids the kind of feel of a bunker effect. So we'll be taking that into consideration as we go through that design process and make sure we have the minimum impact on that amenity.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Okay. Let's take this one to the vote. The recommendation as it stands. All those in favour? Wonderful. Carried unanimously. We're almost at the end, fellas. And Ms Cook. 8.3.8, petition development and rezoning of land at 1 Mummery Road, Myrtleford.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. So this report relates to a petition received by Council objecting to the redevelopment and rezoning of land on Mummery Road in Myrtleford. Just by way of background, 1 Mummery Road in Myrtleford is a council-owned site, approximately 1.5 kilometres north of Myrtleford, which is known locally as the Old Mill Site, and it is situated adjacent to the Myrtleford Recreation Reserve to the north. At the council meeting in April 2025, a member of the community hand delivered a petition to council objecting to any future development and rezoning of that land. The petition was assessed and considered not to satisfy council's governance rule 4 for petitions. However, while this correspondence does not meet all of the requirements for the petition outlined in council's governance rules, officers acknowledge that the requirements for petitions may not have been easy to find on council's website, and it has been determined to treat the correspondence as a petition. So council's website has been updated in the meantime to make this information more easily available. The petition was signed by 45 individuals and stated that we, the undersigned concerned residents of Myrtleford, firmly object to any redevelopment and rezoning of the land located at the end of Mummery Road, etc. The Mummery Road Mill operated until late 1980s, and the site was then acquired by council, or the Myrtlefordshire Council at the time, in 1992. The owner of the site was required to implement an approved remediation program. And as part of council's land development strategy, which was adopted last year, it identified Myrtleford as one of the 4 service towns, along with Bright, Mount Beauty, Toowoomba South and Pulpunka, that would, in the settlement hierarchy, which could accommodate the majority of the municipality's future population growth. The land development strategy identifies 1 Mummery Road as an area of investigation for future residential development. However, in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act, Council will ensure that any future use of the land will be decided in accordance with the best interests of the community and will undertake such determinations in consultation with the community at the relevant time. Any council decisions relating to future use of land will be subject to a community engagement process under the requirements of the Local Government Act, and this will ensure that the best interests of the community are considered and that a holistic approach is undertaken that considers a wide range of existing and emerging issues. It is recommended that Council notes the concerns to the redevelopment and encourages all signatories to that petition to actively participate in that engagement process when it is brought forward in due course.
Thank you, Mr Rees. Councillors? Reverend Seconder, Councillor Ronco. Councillor Anderson, thank you. Councillor Ronco.
No, nothing to add.
Nothing to add. Does anybody make a comment? Yes, Councillor Byrne.
Director Rees, I understand there's been some technical feasibility studies undertaken. Do we know when those reports will be available?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Yes, some technical work has been undertaken to understand the ground conditions and etc. soil. They're still underway. I'll have to take that one on notice and come back. Well, someone will come back in the next meeting.
Yeah, we've saved this one up for you. Yeah, could have. Okay.
Make a promise, but I think that would be unfair.
There's no further comment or discussion. We'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. And the next item, I believe, Mr. Councillor Byrne has a conflict of interest on. Would you like to just quickly outline what that is before you leave, Councillor Byrne?
I actually own a caravan park myself, and as such, I'll take discussion here.
Perfect. Thank you. And Councillor Byrne leaves the room at 7:50. Thank you, Mr Rees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates to another petition which was received by Council at the previous, I think, the April meeting, and it's objecting to the expansion of the caravan park at the Myrtleford Recreation Reserve. Just by way of background and context, the Myrtleford Recreation Reserve is Crown land managed by the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, DECA, and the site is managed by a DECA-appointed committee of management. And that committee is responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations, maintenance and development of the Recreation Reserve in line with DECA's guidelines and policies. On 27 May 2025, Council resolved to receive and note a petition objecting to further expansion of the caravan park at the Myrtleford Rec Reserve, and the petition was assessed and considered again not to satisfy Council's governance rules. We've just been through it. The website's been updated and we've accepted it as a petition on the basis that the information wasn't easily available. There were 43 signatures on this petition, and they have asked or have stated that they are concerned residents of Myrtleford and would like to strongly object to the proposed expansion of the caravan facilities within the recreation reserve, etc. I think it's important to note that council officers acknowledge these concerns that have been raised regarding the operational issues. However, as the facility is located on Crown land and managed by a DECA-appointed committee of management, council has no authority to intervene in operational or management matters. Council does not provide a regular waste collection service to the site. Waste is the responsibility of the committee, and Council does assist with mowing the site approximately 4 times a year in preparation for major events like the Myrtleford Show. In relation to noise complaints or disturbances, these should be directed to the Victoria Police for appropriate response and enforcement. Officers did engage with the Committee of Management to gain a clearer understanding of the current issues and management arrangements at the site, and were advised that there are no works underway to increase the number of powered sites, and there are currently no plans on the expansion of this facility. It's recommended that Council notes these concerns and forwards them to DECA as an appropriate authority for them to consider.
Thank you, Mr Rees. Councillors, mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Tamsin, seconded Councillor Anderson. Councillor Tamsin, third Councillor Anderson. Anybody got anything to add? Recommendation as it stands? No. Put it to vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Councillor Byrne can re-enter. And Mr Rees, last report. How does it feel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I suppose I did have the opportunity to make a few more promises
Than you otherwise might have. I love it.
but no, thank you for indulging me and for your support. There's a lot of work that's gone into these.
Over many years.
Yes, indeed, as we've noted. So thank you for the privilege to have brought these to you.
Councillor Burns returned to the room at 7:54. And we move on to item 9, informal meeting of councillors. Councillor Graham. No, I was joking. Could I have a mover and a second for the recommendation, please? Yep, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Tanzan. Anything to come and say? No? Any questions about this? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Presentation of reports by delegates, item 10. Do you have any delegate reports this month? No delegate reports for anybody listening, watching, for councillors to report back on meetings that they've been to as a representative. Item 11, general business. And I'm going to start from the right again. Sorry, Councillor Anderson. Usually I alternate, but I know there's something coming here. No, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Graham, Councillor Smith, Councillor Tanzan. No, before we go back to Councillor Ronco, I just have one thing that I wanted to raise. Yeah, that'll do. Is the Alpine Shire Youth Award nominations are open and they close on the 4th of August. And I might need some help here. I know you can nominate a young person on Engage Alpine, but is there anything offline? Do we know of? That's right, let's get back to people.
I'm sorry, I'll have to take that on notice.
Sorry, I should have asked earlier.
Thank you.
But just for anybody who might be listening or tune in later, there's award categories of things like sporting, excellence, academic, creative, leadership. I can't remember what they all are, but if you know an outstanding young person in the Alpine Shire, then put them forward. Thank you. Now we go to Councillor Ronco.
Sorry, I know it's a very big meeting and it's at the end of the meeting, but I think we need to address it for residents, especially for farmers. So I want just to talk about the emergency service and volunteer fund. So I would like to support Alpine Shire Mayor to write and advocate for the Victoria government regarding the implementation of the new emergency service and volunteer fund. The detail of this levy implementation have been made available only after its announcement in the Victoria Government Budget 2025, late in May 2025. On this short notice and without a clear explanation as to how to implement this levy, I feel that we won't be able to evaluate its complete financial impact on the Alpine Shire Council, but also on its residents. So I would like to advocate for a delay to implement this levy. This delay will help us to secure financial resources to implement this levy and to better understand its impact to our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. I'm going to open the floor, let's call it, for discussion on this point. We don't need to have a council resolution to write a letter to a minister, but I think it's really, important.
For the resident, what we advocate,
Yep.
and we try to find something.
Absolutely, I think it's terrific that we bring it to a public forum and have a views. So, anybody would like to make a comment after Councillor Ronco's introduction? Councillor Graham.
Yes, I'm just wondering what the financial implication will be for the Alpine Shire if people refuse to pay the Emergency Services Volunteers Levy.
Thank you, Director Cook.
Thank you. Councillor Graham, legislatively, we are unable to collect rates without the Emergency Services Volunteer Levy or Fund being proportionally attributed. So when people pay a financial contribution towards their rates notice, if it is less than the total amount, then there will be a proportional allocation of it across to the Emergency Services Volunteer Fund. We are legislatively required to do so, which means that there will be a proportion of the rates unpaid as well as the fund unpaid. And all of that is treated the same in terms of how we collect after that.
Any further comments, questions, discussion? No?
Yeah, the same thing. So also how we will manage volunteer, CFA volunteer, their rebate, how we will manage it.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. The rebate process is being managed through the State Revenue Office, is my understanding. There is more information available on the State Revenue Office as to the processes around the rebate and also around eligibility.
Thank you.
Any further comments or discussion on the levy? No? I'd just like to make a suggestion that when we do write the letter, that all councillors sign it if they'd like to. I think this would be a good one.
Yeah, I think that.
That does come from the mayor. Yep. Works for me.
Thanks
if you
again.
choose to. Okay, so we can move on from that item if we've finished with, yep. Thank you for raising it, Councillor Ronco. The next item is motions for which notice has previously been given, and there are none. Move on. Reception and reading of petitions, there are none. Documents for sealing, there are some. There's 6 that have come out of the meeting that we've just had or just passed. So the recommendation is that those documents are signed and sealed, and I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Townsend, Councillor Smith. Thank you. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Yep. Sorry, I was just going, did you put his hand up here? You might have been really quick. Yeah. Thank you. And that means that we can close the meeting. Just making sure everything's gone through right and I'm not going to get held up. At 8:01, I thought it was going to be 8. I'm not bad. Thanks, everybody. It was a huge meeting. Well done.